Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Education Conclave 2022. It's a rarity for us to have men in the audience at our events usually, so to all the men here, consider it a special privilege today. We are very happy to call this beautiful place the FICCI Ladies Organization. At the start, I request all of you to please keep your phones on silent, and if you do feel the necessity, please wear your mask as a precautionary measure. We are honored to have with us our chief guest, the chair of FICCI Karnataka, and the joint MD of Jyoti Laboratories, Mr. Ullas Kamath. Thank you, sir, for gracing this occasion with your presence. Our guest of honor today is Vani Ganapati, one of the country's leading exponent in Bharatanatyam, a teacher and a connoisseur of art. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable presence today. I request our chairperson, Revati Raju, to escort the chief guest and guest of honor, along with the Edu Committee and the past chair, to light the lamp and begin today's event. I request Ms. Neeru Agarwal of Greenwood International and Mr. Yashovardhan Podar from Open House, our sponsors for today's event, to please join in the ceremony. Members of the Edu Committee, please join in the ceremony. Thank you, dignitaries. I request Payal Bhate to please escort the dignitaries to the dais. Request the chairperson Revati Raju and Mr. Ullas Kamath on stage, please. Thank you. Mr. Ullas Kamath, the chair of FICCI Karnataka. Mr. Kamath is the joint MD of Jyoti Laboratories, the manufacturer of popular cloth whitener Ujala, a qualified chartered accountant, lawyer, and company secretary. He joined Jyoti Labs in 1991 and is instrumental in taking the company to the level that it is at today. So I request you to please come over and deliver the keynote address to our eager audience. Thank you.
Namaskaram to you all. Vidyadhanam Sarvadhana Pradhanam. Wealth of knowledge is the most precious wealth. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our esteemed guests, FLO members, to the FLO Education Enclave 2020. Education Minister Mr. Ashwath Narayan ji was meant to be here, but unfortunately will not be able to join us as he had plans on some emergency. He sends his best wishes to us. I would like to welcome and thank our guest of honor, Srimati Vani Ganapati, for her presence here today. The knowledge of arts and crafts is what makes education complete, and a renowned artist like you would understand the relevance of it the most. We would be honored to hear your insights on this today. It is indeed a pleasure to have Mr. Ullas Kamath, Chairman of FICCI Karnataka State Council. With your formidable experience and educational background, your presence here is encouraging for all of us, sir. Education is not learning the facts, but training the mind to think. This resonates with the vision of the NEP 2020, which aims for an India that has an education system second to none by 2040, with equitable access to the highest quality of education for all learners, regardless of their social or economic background. As an educator myself, I'm excited to see the various avenues this updated policy will open up for students across all stratas. A shift from the rote learning methods, which our educational system has been all about, we now have a policy that reforms our approach and changes the school curriculum and pedagogy completely across the ages. At FLO, we have been working in the education sector too, by introducing English and computer literacy programs in our adopted village, Nodakaplu, in Mandya district, and has been very well received by the students there. Their excitement and enthusiasm keeps us motivated to introduce similar schemes and initiatives. We have even built a community hall for conducting skill initiatives to uplift their community. I have been planning this conclave since long, but always got postponed due to multitude factors. A discussion on NEP, the possibilities it offers, can help all the stakeholders involved to understand the impact of it, and we hope this conclave will facilitate this. FLO also promotes women entrepreneurship, providing ideal platforms for women to launch their startups and become financially independent. It is always the first step that is most challenging. Discussions like we are having today can give the necessary information and input us to take the first steps towards the various milestones to follow not just for women, but everyone who dares to dream big. I would sincerely like to thank the panelists and the whole team who worked behind the scenes tirelessly to make this education conclave possible. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Revati. I now request Mr. Ullas Kamath to deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Revati Madam, for inviting me for this function. And thank you, Vani Ganapati Madam, for gracing the occasion. The kind of aura what you bring to the dais is amazing. Education policy and the way we have followed in the last many decades we knew that there is some flaw because end of the day, when people get educated, they should get a job. If they don't get a job, there is something is wrong. The unemployability in India, all of us we have seen, we are witnessing. And some statistics says that India needs a million jobs for graduates every month. It's not per year and every month. And I also understand that just coastal three districts of Karnataka produces 40,000 engineers every year. It's like more like a factory. 40,000 engineers. Only three coastal districts produces. And yes, most of them will get the job. Some of them don't. We have also seen the last 30 years how the knowledge industry has made us to be one of the powerful nations in the world. But for that knowledge industry, probably our GDP could have been totally different. Thanks to the like of Narendra Modi sir, Wipro Premji sir, and the TCS of the world. They made our kids to go around the world, use their knowledge, use their education, train them, and we became one of the most powerful software houses in the world. And the basis for that was education. And Y2K problem was the nightmare for the world, but India encashed on that. And that's where the entire game of sending the people abroad and getting the offshore work started. And again, the reason for that was education. I come from a background of selling consumer goods like Ujala, Exo, Pril, Fa, wherein we don't recruit the people who come first in class. Most of us, we recruit them who come last in class. Because to sell Ujala, you need to be hardworking. You don't have to apply your mind when 97% of the population knows Ujala is Char Bunda Wala. But you need to be presenting your product in 8 million retail outlets. It's not an easy task. So today, this enclave, Revati Madam, it's a fantastic one. The panel discussion, what you'll be going to do, will give us more ideas how we can work on the new education policy in such a way our next generation, they get the job as soon as they come out of the college. And they also learn what they want to learn rather than going through, like the way how we have gone through our education. And we only studied to get best marks. And we only studied to write for that 3 hours examination. And after that, frankly, I don't remember anything. That's what most of the people probably, other than the people who have opted for education as a profession, as a lecturer or a professor, they will be remembering. But me as a student, no. I just know how to write for the 20 marks and get that 20 out of 10, your life is made. So going forward, the things will change. Going forward, the kids have to know, and they need to know what they like to know, not necessarily that everybody have to go through the same syllabus, what it was there in the past. So NEP for all of us is new. It looks very, very interesting. And yes, Government of India has fought and fought and fought with all the opposition what is required. They fought and finally the policy is out. And all the deliberations, what the panelists or accomplished people have in their own field, and the outcome of that could be the follow-up recommendation if it is required. But my limited request to everyone is that India needs job creators. Only when you have job creators, then you can create the job. And the job creators, Government of India is there with the Stand Up India, Make in India, Atmanirbhar. Every program is related to job creation. And if we have to be 5 trillion economy, if you want to be 10 trillion economy, it is only when we produce what is required for the country and what is required for the world. And we need to be the global suppliers while we are there in the knowledge, but we also need to be there in the product and services too. And this NEP will help us to go there as quickly as possible. And our kids, we want them to be in India. We are seeing what's happening on the TV. and we sent them there. I don't think that any kid will have gone there to study if he had got an opportunity to study in the neighborhood. And when you hear the parent of a deceased child that he got 97%, and we tried everywhere, when he didn't get the seat for medical what he was aspiring for, he had to go all the way there, and rest is all of us we know. So somewhere, the place, what's happening there, none of us we know what's happening there, we only see in the TV. But the kids who are there, 18,000, they will have learned the local language to learn medicine or engineering, and that could have done in the neighborhood today. So 97%, first in 10th standard, first rank in the PUC. If he didn't get an admission in MBBS, then something is wrong in the system. So my heart goes for those kids who are there, who are struggling very hard to come back to their own country and holding our flag. And again, it is connected with the NEP. It is connected with our education system here. I don't think that any other country will have sent so many number of kids to the other country to learn what is available here in the country. You don't send them there. However, the discussion around NEP will give us umpteen ideas and also recommendation to our ministries. This is the way forward. And we have also seen the classic example of Delhi government, how they have transformed the public schools. I've gone myself, few of the schools, amazing. There's no doubts in my mind. All they could do in 5 years itself is a big, big change. And if that can be adopted around the country, the government school will become the preferred destinations. And our teachers undoubtedly are the best in the world. Our teachers, undoubtedly, they're the best in the world, and there is no second thoughts about it. And we always believed in Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, and Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guru Nama. That's what I have been. And today, if we are standing here, it's because of the teachers who taught us. And we are here today, it's because of the teachers. And this Guru and Shishya relationship and the teacher and the student relationship is one of the highest in the country here, because when we study abroad, we are friends with the teacher. But when we study here, we are scared of the teacher. And especially the mathematics and English teacher, we try to be as away as possible. But when you study abroad, which I witnessed myself, then they're all friends. So to that extent, I think best time, Revati Madam has decided to go for this, and Madam, this is one of the first offline event of the scale in which you are doing. Congratulations, and I appreciate your guts. And especially after almost 18 months now, somebody is holding a program like this. It's an amazing one, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak. And anything which you can do at FICCI, anything to do from the industries, and including your dream project of making women entrepreneurs through Government of Karnataka, we will support in all respect, whichever the way you want. And trust me, women entrepreneurs are far better than men entrepreneurs. There's no doubts. It is just that you should enable them to do it. You should enable them to do it, because they are multitaskers. They can manage 5 things at a time. They can manage 10 things at a time. And men, to manage 1 thing at a time, we get stressed. So undoubtedly, Karnataka can be the torchbearer for the Women Entrepreneur Spark, what you are aspiring for. And we at FICCI, we are always admired the FICCI FLO initiatives. They do it in style. They do it in scale. And I can witness that. And congratulations once again to you, Madam. And thank you for the opportunity. And God bless. And look forward for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamath, for your words of encouragement. And I'm sure FICCI FLO and FICCI will scale greater heights. Vani Ganapati, a Bharatnatyam exponent, began training at the tender age of 4 and had her Arangetram by the age of 7. As a successful solo artist, she has toured extensively across the world And at home in Bangalore, she established her dance institution Sanchari, where she trains students in Bharatanatyam. Vani Ganapati had a 3-year stint with Doordarshan and the Censor Board Committee and has been a jury member for the International Film Festival. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence today, and I request you to kindly speak a few words to the audience.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's most apt to say here, ladies and gentlemen, because ladies outnumber the gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me, Revati and Mr. Kamath. Pleasure hearing you speak. There are many women here who are already people I know, except that with masks we don't know today. Many a times we just pass by and then we suddenly realize, oh, that's a person I know, and we come back to say hello. But I guess we still have to be on guard. Omicron or Corona, whatever they call it, hasn't yet gone anywhere. So let's not drop our guard. And I would like to start with a quote by Albert Einstein. Learning is experience. Everything else is just information. Another quote which I read recently: develop a passion for learning, and if you do, you will never cease to grow. Both of them are so true. But learning doesn't stop at academics alone. Yes, academics is very, very important, but having other extracurricular interests like the arts, fine arts, sports, performing arts, and so on and so forth, gives you an opportunity to explore your passion. It develops an overall personality, a rounded personality. And it also boosts academic performance. Just a quote that I have, just to tell you about some of my students, and two of them in particular. One completed her debut performance a few years ago, and she wanted to pursue her education. She went to Oxford. And another student who, I'm not giving names, but another student of mine who also finished her debut performance with me. Then she wanted to pursue her studies. She went to OWC, and then from there to the Duke University. And after they got their admissions in any of these universities, they didn't even call their parents first. They called me. And they were screaming on the phone with joy, "Auntie, I've got my admission." So I said, "How come you're telling me?" And they, of course, they pointed at "Auntie, you're the first person we are sharing this." I said, "Why me the first person? It should be your parents." They said, "Auntie, it's only because of dance that we got the admission." I said, "What about your academic?" He said, "Okay, all that was in the forms and entry documents, whatever, but the exams and everything. But when they had their interview, the first thing that they were asked, or rather what they went through, was what their extracurricular interests and passions are." And both these girls, having pursued dance and the person who interviewed them was so thrilled, and one of them continued to perform while she was in Oxford for the best of events, even for the Vice Chancellor when he was visiting. And she was so excited about sending all those pictures to me. So, and it has happened to so many students of mine. Well, being a dancer myself, I would like to speak about this from a dancer's point of view. Dance helps in improving the overall health and development of children. It helps in cognitive development, mental challenges, Down syndrome, dyslexia, autism, spastic, every one of them have benefited from dance. I know polio children who used to come to my dance class. I know children with mental challenges who would come and learn from me. I had a student who had a Down syndrome. She was the happiest when she was in the dance class, and that's what her parents said. We have never seen her happier than this. And she spread joy in the class to such an extent that there was one day that the person who was bringing her to the class said, "Ma'am, she has choreographed something on her own. She wants to share it with you." So all my other students sat, watched, and this really helped the girl to such an extent that she is, I won't say completely cured, but she is working in a job, in a proper job. So I taught at the Spastic Society for quite some time, helping the children to understand movement. And I had a student who had dyslexia. She was adamant. She was very, very talented in design and art. But she was adamant to complete and do the debut performance. She says, "Auntie, nothing gave me more joy than this. It even helped me in my skills in designing and art." Dance, of course, like any other exercise, helps our body release serotonin, the happy syndrome, the happy hormone, which in turn helps relieve stress. So when children come back from school, or if they had it as part of their curriculum, the stress of the whole day, especially, can you imagine at this time when they were all the time on online classes, and their eyes must have been so exhausted. So dancing would have made them so happy. Many of my students said, "Auntie, every evening we'd enjoy dancing at least for half an hour to 45 minutes, which made us feel much more, we were much more productive." Dance helps build skills that are very necessary for learning: creativity, communication, collaboration, discipline, punctuality, alertness of the mind, memory, and so many more. Martha Graham, a famous ballet dancer, once said, "The body says what words cannot." And I have actually experienced that. I was once shopping in one of those stores where they were very particular about footwear being left outside because the fabrics were being, spread on the floor and things. And while I was shopping, of course, there were a lot of others, suddenly a foreigner walked up to me and she asked, "Are you a dancer?" I think I was wearing not even Indian clothes. I was wearing maybe skirt or trousers, I can't remember. And I said, "Yes." "So How did you know? Did somebody tell you from the store? Because that was a store I used to visit often. I said, did someone from the store tell you? So she said, no, I just saw the way you walked, saw the grace, saw the poise, saw the confidence. So it's not about me per se, it's my art, it's the dance that brought that. And to this day, I believe that any person who has done body movements, whether it is dance, whether it is aerobics, acrobatics, the body develops a grace and a poise of its own. Most of the time, we recognize and value Indian culture and tradition only after the West has stamped it. Every aspect, if I may say so, has been recognized when the West has put its stamp. We all know of, started long back, Ravi Shankar. We had the Beatles learn from him. And suddenly, Ravi Shankar became, sitar became among Indians. Otherwise, it's the foreigners who were always encouraging and going for their concerts. So, and that is why it is at the school levels when their brains are like sponges. I wish the education minister had been here, where I would have said a new curriculum should be introduced. A simple curriculum. Start with an appreciation course. An appreciation course for them to develop an interest which could later become their passion. Honey is honey only when you taste it. Otherwise, it is a mere word. When you taste it, you experience the sweetness of honey. So we go back to Albert Einstein's quote, learning is experience. Everything else is information. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This holds especially true for all the students present here today, how important it is to inculcate an art into their education. May I now call upon Mrs. Neeru Agarwal of Greenwood International to felicitate the chief guest and our guest of honor. May I now call upon our past chair, Rati Dandania, to felicitate our sponsors, Yashwardhan Podar of Open House and Neeru Agarwal. Mr. Yash, please come onto stage. Thank you so much. Now, Ira Maimuna will give the vote of thanks to conclude the inaugural event.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for gracing this occasion today. Education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks on behalf of FLO Bangalore to Mr. Ullas Kamath, Chair FICCI, and respected guest of honor, Ms. Vani Ganpati. We are honored with your presence, and we thank you for taking out valuable time from your busy schedule. We also want to thank our FLO member, Mrs. Neeru Agarwal from Greenwood High, and Mr. Yash from Open House for believing in us and sponsoring this event. Thank you.
School, started in 2004, has firmly established itself as one of the leading schools in India today. Ideally located in Sarjapur, in India's IT capital, Bengaluru, in a lush green landscape, the school is sheltered away from the hustle and bustle of the city, yet well connected by road, in the vicinity of Electronic City and close to the booming hub of Whitefield, home to Bengaluru's leading tech parks like ITPL. Ranked number 1 in international curriculum by Times Best School Ranking 2019, as well as India's number 2 day-cum boarding school by Education World 2017-18, Greenwood High has risen meteorically through the years. The school's top-notch IBDP and IGCSE programs, backed by IB-certified best-in-class faculty, ensure that its students win admissions in Ivy League and well-renowned universities. An innovatively planned campus provides the ideal environment for students seeking a truly global ambience. World-class facilities like a high-end auditorium, technology-enabled classrooms, cutting-edge science labs, and music and art studios give our students access to the best. On campus is a futuristic indoor sports stadium inaugurated by the then President of India, Pranab Mukherjee, in 2018. With unmatched facilities for children to take a break from academics and a host of outdoor sports facilities to exercise both mind and body, a 1,000-seater cafeteria provides hygienic, temperature-checked, high-quality meals planned by leading nutritionists. Greenwood High International School has fetched the best results in IBDP and IGCSE, receiving the perfect score of 45, 3 years in a row. Last year alone, 71% of our students earned distinction in the final exams. Greenwood High International School, rooted in knowledge. It's where tomorrow's leaders are created.
All you wanted to know about NEP but didn't know whom to ask. We now get down to business. I call upon Siddha Jain to introduce and welcome our panelists for this subject.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of FLO Bangalore and our chairperson, Srimati Revati Raju, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the first panel discussion of the afternoon, which is Future of Education and Understanding NEP. If I start introducing all of you, I think I'm going to stand here for a long, long time, so I'll keep it very short. I consider it a great honor to welcome Ms. Kanchi Khanna, the moderator for this discussion. Ms. Kanchi Khanna is the Senior Director of Admissions and Outreach at Plaksha University. She is a recipient of IC3's counseling-based approach to student recruitment admissions award 2019. Please come on the dais, please. It is my privilege to request Dr. Viraj Kumar to grace the dais, please. Dr. Viraj Kumar is a visiting professor of IISc Bangalore and the chair of ACM India's Special Interest Group for CS Education. He has a keen interest in computer science pedagogy and holds MS and PhD degrees in computer science from the University of Illinois. It is my honor to invite Ms. Shefali Tyagi to the dais, please. Equipped with Bachelor in Commerce and Masters in Business Management, followed with successful stint with MNC in the field of HR, Ms. Shefali Tyagi found her calling in the field of education and joined the National Public School in the year 2000. As a principal of NPS HSR since 2016, she has been enthusiastically kindling the spark that education can ignite. I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Shaheem Rahman to come on the dais, please. Mr. Shaheem Rahman is the Chief Executive Officer at Atria University and is responsible for delivering a restructured learning experience that enables students to craft unique learning pathways to forge their distinct journeys into the future. Mr. Shaheem holds a number of technology implementations firsts to his credit, building India's first banking sector blockchain solution for Kotak Mahindra, and setting up the largest toll-free management system on an open space, to name a few. Now, we look forward to the presence of Dr. Manjula Raman on the stage, please. Dr. Manjula Raman is a nominee for the Padma Shri Award 2018 in the field of literature and education. She is the two-time President Awardee for her contribution in the field of education and is currently the CEO at Academics and Innovations with Royal Concord School. Ms. Kanchi Khanna, please start the discussion. Mics.
A very good afternoon to everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ms. Revati. Thank you, FLO. And also, I really want to put this down here. It was an absolute honor to be, listening to Vani ma'am and, of course, Mr. Kamath. With this, I'm going to start the first panel discussion of the event. And we will be talking about the NEP like we were introduced. But what all of us and a lot of us here are educators, right? And we have read the NEP, we've discussed it, we've deliberated on it. I think it's now time for all of us to talk about its implementation. What are the implications? How are we going to go about it? It's an amazing document. We can all agree to that, right? But what are we really going to do with it, and how are we really going to make sure that it transforms India into not just a vibrant knowledge society, but a very global knowledge superpower. And that's what we are really poised at right now. So the NPE, or the National Policy for Education, was initially framed in 1986. It was modified in 1992, and finally now announced the new education policy in July 2020. This is really built on the foundational pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability, and most importantly, accountability. So it aims to sort of build students, it looks at diversity, it aims to really create an ecosystem, a learning ecosystem, which is very student-centric, which allows to bring out the unique capabilities of every student. So with that, I'm going to start the conversation with my esteemed panelists, and who better to start it with but Professor Viraj, who was very closely supporting the NEP committee. And to him, I'm going to ask, having so closely worked with the committee, let me, ask you, what had the committee actually envisioned? And also, in my opinion, I feel that we'll require a very bottoms-up approach to sort of implement this, very grassroots level interventions. Would you like to comment on that, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Kanchi, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Before I answer your question, I can't resist, since we had this wonderful comment about your anecdote that you shared, Vani ma'am, about being asked if you were a dancer. I once gave a talk and someone came up to me and said, "Are you a dancer?" And I was shocked, because I'm the world's most atrocious dancer. But I realized that, as you rightly said, body movement is so important when it comes to teaching. And I've just spent the last year and a half hunched over a wretched laptop, and I know that my teaching has suffered as a result. I think what you said applies to many more areas. Of course, dance, I think, is the ultimate expression of that. But to get to your question, so I think it's very brave of the policy to acknowledge the seriousness of the problem that we face of education. The policy uses this term learning crisis, which pulls no punches. This is the reality of the vast majority of the education system of the country. And to solve that crisis, especially at the school level, I think requires a combination. I don't think it is entirely a bottom-up process. And I'll give one example of this. Is something that's happening just today, because one of the most important things that's coming out of the NEP, at least as far as school education is concerned, is a revised curriculum framework. And that is a combination of a bottom-up and a top-down approach. It is explicitly, this curriculum framework is explicitly aimed at soliciting bottom-up information, because without that, it's very much someone sitting somewhere up on high dictating terms and not being aware. So it is very much soliciting that, but at the same time, in order to make sense of that input, there is a top-down guidance, a framework that has been given. And I think this is just the reality of our system. It's so vast, it's so resource-starved when it comes to the size that it has to cater to. And I'm talking about the entire education system as a whole, that I think this is reflected in when we say, we are not achieving even foundational literacy, numeracy. It was such a basic thing that, we do not achieve. I think that's reflective of this. When it comes to higher education, I think there is much more of a recognition in the policy, quite clearly, that there has to be bottom-up. And I think a lot of the policies around higher education are trying to clear the deck, provide greater autonomy, get rid of the affiliation system that has been a bugbear for so many decades. I mean, one thing that this policy provides that's slightly different to earlier policies is explicit ways in which you can achieve some of these things, because obviously our weak point has been in the past going from policy to implementation. There's no question that that is something that we really need to work more on.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you. And that's probably why it's guidelines, it's policy, it's not a law, right? We have to give autonomy to the institutions for them to implement this and empower them, right, to do that, yeah. So, Dr. Manjula, I'd like to come to you. The policy lays down, like I mentioned earlier, the design of a learning ecosystem that recognizes diversity in students. The pace of learning, each student is different, each student is unique. So we'll have to think about all those things, right? And this will require raising the bar for teachers. What do you feel about teacher training, and how can it, really happen? How could we have teachers who are more inspiring, teachers who are looking at bringing the joy back into learning rather than just trying to complete their curriculum? Please, your comments on that.
Thank you, Kanchi, and good afternoon, everyone. There is a learning crisis, but definitely the change cannot come if you have a jet engine tied to a bullock cart. At the moment, we are bullock carts. We may say anything, but we have to change the mindset, and the person who's going to make all that change is the teacher. It cannot be done by anything else. Well, I think our NEP was timed very well providentially, because just as we started talking about the NEP, the pandemic came. And all our teachers upskilled themselves in reaching out to students who were across the country and the world and used technology. A school principal, I was one too, we would ask our teachers, upskill yourself in technology. We'll have Google Classrooms. We should be reachable to students at different times. Let the children choose what they want to study at their time. Let it be inclusive. Let's have assessment based on individual preferences and competency. But nobody took it seriously. But we've done all that in the last 2 years. So my heart goes out to all the edu warriors, as I call them, because it's come so naturally. It's as if India prepared itself for propelling on a jet engine, and we have a jet engine instead of a bullock cart in teachers today. So having said that, thank you. I feel good about being a teacher. And having said that, any policy is as good as the person who's driving it. It's not going to be the technocrat or the prime minister or the people who wrote the policy. They've given the framework, and it's for us to propel it forward. And for that, training is very, very important. And I think in a lot of ways, the different boards, whether it is the Indian boards I'm talking about, the ICSE or the CBSE, there's a whole lot of training. And all that has come because all the trainings, like a corporate life, is all after 6 o'clock. The school teacher's work finished earlier at 3. She went back home, but now she's engaged in a whole lot of webinars and training programs, which is maybe post 5 o'clock or on a holiday. So what happens is that technology has helped to reach. And secondly, I think most of the teachers, when we started off with the pandemic, each one of us had to get better than, the other colleague, because we were constantly like, Miss Wani would have been, everybody watching with awe. The teacher was also watched by the whole family, friends, relatives, especially in the Zoom era, when anybody could come into a classroom and start watching. It was all very new. It was like a movie going on, and the poor teacher struggling from her home with clothes hanging on at her back, or some child tugging at a sari. And she was managing to do the class, and the principal watching you know, how she conducts the class. So I think the teachers have learnt a lot. There is a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of free materials and pedagogical ideas available today. It's no more close to the heart that, you know, my best practice is mine. It is now shared with everyone, and everybody likes to take a small little video and put it up. So I think the training is happening naturally in the ecosystem. But yes, we have to work at different levels in our country. Our NEP will be only as good as we reach out to every single child in the country. And I totally agree with our chief guest when he said the transformation of schools in Delhi and Kerala. He forgot Kerala. Since I belong to that place, I've seen some of the schools transformed, where they didn't even have 5 children going to a government school, but today they have a house full. So this transformation of public schools reaching out, and excellent education available not only at the click of a button, but at the step of a school, neighborhood school. I think that's what will transform.
Absolutely, and so well said. And I also feel that this has to become more collaborative. Schools that are doing well, schools that have the better resources to help bring up the quality in, in schools that are not so privileged. But definitely, yes, educators like you, I'm sure, will plan out the implementation, will make sure that students and teachers get the resources that they require for this. So the NEP also lays down a lot of guidelines for the higher education institutions, whether it's bringing in multidisciplinarity, whether it's research. And we all know that, even though our institutions and colleges are churning out, like Mr. Kamath said, 40,000 students from 3 districts, but the quality of students and the quality of education that they receive is really something we need to question. What are we giving to, how much are we challenging even the best students that come to us, even the IITs? How much are they challenging that very bright mind that you got into your college, right? So the NEP has looked at so many aspects. Why don't, universities in India get highly ranked in the world rankings? One of the main reasons is research. And I think that's very important to bring into our higher education ecosystem to get research capabilities. And I have Shaheem with me here. He's the CEO of the homegrown Atria University. And Shaheem, I'd like to ask you what this policy really means for you, what it means for Atria, and what does it mean for the entire university ecosystem here. But I would specifically want you to comment on, one, the program design, and the other, the bringing in of research capabilities in the education system here.
Thank you, Kanchi. So, the underlying principles of NEP that I take away for higher education, 2 things, right? One is, there is an underlying narrative of trying to kill knowledge accumulation and focusing on knowledge application. For the largest part, our education system is trying to focus on knowledge accumulation rather than application. I think the NEP in many different ways encourages universities to say, hey, it's more important to apply knowledge, right? That's one key takeaway I have from NEP. Every line in the NEP when I read, I actually look at it from that point of view. Another one, which I think is a root cause for a lot of problems, is exams, right? Exams, scoring exams. Now, NEP, again, in its own way, has used literature to an extent to say, hey, exams is not the end means to everything, right? And I personally feel exams is primarily the reason why our education system gets like this, because I look back at my undergrad, very frequently I reminisce the time, and I think that it's probably the most wasteful 4 years of education in my life, right? I don't know how many of you agree with your experience, but my experience. Because I just felt as soon as I got into the undergrad program, I knew what exams are going to come at me. And I knew with absolute clarity, I can score 70% plus if I study in the study holidays, right? I knew that in the beginning. Now, that meant I could scam the system. And I actually did. I'm here, I'm telling you, I did. I don't know how many of you will agree you did so, but I did. So exam was the root cause there, right? Had the education system been such that where every day I had to pay attention to what was happening, and I actually had deliverables, tasks assigned that I had to complete, just like what we do in the organizations. Each one of us who've been in the corporate world, some of us call it being slave, but yeah, every day we have deliverables, right? Now you put that kind of a mentality in a student in the undergrad system, things change. Now you're actually focusing, they're actually trying to see how to apply knowledge. So two things, Kanchi. One is emphasis on knowledge application over knowledge accumulation. Second is making it flexible enough for universities to not rely on exams as the decision making on how capable an individual is. It is actually ridiculous that students go through 12 years of K-12 and then do 4 years of undergrad, and literally we put them in a piece of paper called mark sheet and we say this is what represents their entire 16 years. That concept is absolutely ridiculous. I'm glad universities now have an opportunity to throw that paper away and have a different form of evaluation. I will continue on the next part. Sorry, I'm taking a little while, right? Now, these two things help universities or help the education system to not have a process that can be scammed. So that's very heartening for me from NEP. As someone who's in the education sector right now I have the freedom to teach students in a different methodology. You earlier mentioned about interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, right? The universities are forced, going forward, once NEP is in full motion, universities will have to provide multiple exit points for a student. The exit points can be as short as a certification program, which could be a couple of months, diploma, which could be a year, and then a degree, which could be 3 to 4 years. Now what this does is, it keeps the universities on toes, because a student has the opportunity to exit your system if they don't like what they're getting. The current system does not allow that, or allows it in a very difficult way. So most of the universities take it for granted that if I get an admit in year 1, I have captive for 4 years, right? And I'm going to feed what I want because this person owes me money for 4 years. That narrative is going to change, right? When you have your customer, which is a child, constantly evaluate you whether you're delivering to value that they have paid for, then you perform better. So I'd say I'm picking on these 3 high-level items to say those are the 3 things that actually make sure our education system will cleaned up. How it is going to happen, that will happen because you have a gun to your head saying that your customers are going to leave you, right? The universities are going to evolve.
I've seen in the last 1 decade, while there's flashes in the pan or they're just, a few flashes across the country, but some fantastic institutions come up which have, when you read their curriculum, when you see how they are functioning and you look at the NEP, they've really done justice to it. They've sort of preempted what the NEP had said. And of course, ATRIA is also one of them. And you have a very different kind of a program structure. I was very curious to know about that, and I would like you to talk about it because it's very game-changing. It's very, it's very new.
Thanks, Kanchi. Thanks. In the last 1 year, I've visited many education conferences, gone to many schools. One thing I've noticed is I'm glad I'm not alone in the journey, right, of bringing this change. I notice, in addition to ATRIA, I notice Plaksha, I notice Kriya, I notice Flame. There are at least a handful of universities that have begun this journey where actually they have foreseen what NEP is going to do and willfully implemented them already, right? I told you earlier about knowledge application over knowledge accumulation. At the university, I believe that's how it's going to be in the future, because if you have to give certificates, someone has to finish a project, right? At ATRIA University, again, I'm not naming ATRIA itself, the likes, which I said, Plaksha, Kriya, Flame, all of them, they focus on students to complete a project. A project is what gives them credits for a course. A project means you have applied knowledge, right? During a 4-year course at the universities, like the ones that I called out, right? A student typically does between 10 to 30 projects. That means 20 to 30 opportunities where they have applied knowledge. Earlier on, I think Mr. Kamath spoke about this, wherein employers ask about extracurricular activities and where you have applied knowledge. an education model that forces a student to apply knowledge 10 to 20 times and do a project. That product is far superior than someone who's accumulated a lot of knowledge. So from a program course perspective, Kanchi, that's one focus area. Another is flexibility, right? I'm over 40 now, between 20 and 40. There were multiple times in my career I really thought about, hey, what do I want to do next from my career perspective? And all of us can relate to that. It's unfortunate that we ask in our education system, we tell a 16-year-old child to make a decision on what their career is going to be. That's a wrong point to ask them to make that decision. Now, the education model that we are talking about, the likes of universities that I mentioned, allow the student flexibility to decide what they want to do after joining the undergrad program. The students get to see what is commerce, what is arts, what's science, technology implementation, what is computer science, what is electronics, what is electricals. So they get to see courses that are interwoven, interdisciplinary, right? Not just the traditionals, it breaks the traditional silos of computers, electricals, electronics. By the way, none of them can exist by themselves. There is no product in this world that uses only one of those engineering facets, right? They bring together electrical, electronics, and computers. And there is no product in the world that does not involve commercials. There is no product in the world that does not involve design. So none of this should be taught in silos. So our curriculum, the likes of the universities I mentioned, make sure all of these are brought together, provides flexibility for the student to figure out what they like and then pursue more of it.
Absolutely. And you know what, I'd come to you, Shefali. You know, we are moving towards, we are moving from a faculty-centric or a teacher-centric approach to a more student-centric approach, which we've just spoken about, how we are, you know, making it a very self-directed learning for the student. They design what they want to learn, they design what they want to study, and the way they want to do it. So how do you think that's going to affect existing institutions? How are they going to, you know, really bring about the change?
Well, good afternoon, all of you, and thank you, Kanchi, for such a relevant question for me, coming from the school background. I want to bring to the attention that NEP was timed in such a way that education system underwent a paradigm shift due to the onset of pandemic. And it actually accelerated the pace of change for all of us and made us more resilient towards it. Another aspect I felt was that it brought out the importance of social and emotional skills and emotional requirement, or rather I would say overall well-being of a child. It brought it to the forefront. And within this scenario, I would say that implementing NEP or thinking of how to implement NEP, there are a few aspects that we need to cater to or we need to look at. One would be restructuring the curriculum and restructuring it to make it more value-based, more skill-based, right from the early years. I personally also feel that textbooks, reliance on textbooks needs to be reduced. I feel that textbooks should be just a handbook, giving a lot of open space for the teacher to explore based on how much students can absorb. And this will require a robust curriculum and also very well structured, designed lesson plans, which will look at the development of skills among students and competencies, building competencies. So one, looking at the curriculum, and another aspect is transforming our teaching learning pedagogies in the classroom. As I think most of you rightly mentioned, that it has to move from teacher-centric to student-centric, child-centric. And it is important that we give that space to the child. And for that, teaching learning in the classroom has to be something which is interaction-based, which is inquiry-based learning, and it's not difficult to implement it, which is more project-based, which is more research-oriented, and where child has an opportunity to express himself and herself. They can think about situation, analyze, and present themselves. So these are the requirements, and for this, we have to transform our lesson plans, and that's the key. I feel classroom learning has to be enjoyable and engaging at the same time. So once we have looked at the curriculum, we have looked at the teaching, learning, pedagogy, next we have to rethink of assessments. We have to redesign our assessments. And assessments have to move away from assessment of learning. Instead of that, it should be assessment for learning and assessment as learning, which is known as summative assessment. So these assessments, to be very effective, we need to equip our teachers. It's very important to equip our teachers to be able to have the skill and capability to conduct teacher-led classroom assessments. Everyone is talking about year-end exams. Year-end exams does not actually evaluate the actual ability of a child or skills of a child. So it has to be continuous evaluation, but it has to be done in such a systematic manner which is supported by very well-defined rubrics so that it's easier for teacher to assess. So that part I feel, and of course I'll go on about it because this is something I'm very passionate about. Once we have taken care of assessment, who will do all this? Has to be teachers. So we need to train our teachers, we need to upskill our teachers, we need to build their capacity, focus on professional development, because once we empower them, they will be able to take the NEP forward in the true spirit, the way it should be. It will also build the confidence of teachers, and I think it's the need of the hour to build their confidence. As ma'am mentioned, that they have been literally taking classes at home for others, and everyone is viewing it, sometimes in a big LED screen at home. So it is little confidence building that is required for them, and I feel teachers need to be given that status, that respect in the society that they deserve. And equipping them with the right amount of training will definitely give them that. I'm not done yet. There's another, these are all short-term part. As far as long-term impact is concerned, long-term changes, I feel, is changing the mindset of these stakeholders. As I know, there are a lot of liberal arts universities coming in, and it gives a lot of opportunity to the students to explore various aspects of their personality. So I feel that it requires a change of mindset of all the stakeholders. Moving from STEM education-focused generation to adapt and adopt to the new liberal, new education policy will take time, and it's worth the effort, and it will definitely give us a lot of productive outcome, and if we continue doing it. So I think focusing on teachers, changing the mindset of all the stakeholders will definitely do the right things and implement the NEP in the right spirit, the way it should be. Thank you.
Absolutely, it's so well said. So, and coming from one of these, first from a liberal arts university and now from a tech university, I strongly believe we have to technologize the humanities and humanize the technologies. It's so important to bring them all together. But before I move to the audience, Professor Viraj, I want you to comment, and I'm very keen to hear thoughts around this, about the research, building research capabilities among students, becoming knowledge creators rather than just imbibing knowledge. I mean, I know it's information, knowledge to wisdom, but still at some point we have to innovate, right?
Yeah, so in the policy, research has a very, very significant component because, it has major impact for the country strategically, economically, and so forth. The recognition is that, again, looking at higher education as a whole, we are not doing anywhere nearly as well. Part of this is coordination of effort in terms of funding and supporting research. So one of the big changes in the policy with this National Research Foundation, which is actually one of the areas which has, substantially moved forward, is trying to coherently put together research funding. Whereas currently we chase after this institution and that organization and that agency and spend a lot of our time as academics doing a lot of paperwork, for dotting the I's, crossing the T's as far as that project is concerned. And then what that project means, the point Shaheem was saying in terms of it actually getting applied somewhere rather than just being a little piece of isolated knowledge. These are the changes that are envisaged. So in the policy, the ideation at the committee level was very clear that, as a country, we have really just focused a lot of our efforts on pure research. Generally speaking, if you look at pure research, this is what gets all the accolades. This is where academia gets the glow from. Whereas, converting that into applied and translational research, this is something that we're weak at, and we've been weak at for decades. So this whole infrastructure, research infrastructure, the support for research, the recognition that it's important, has to be built up. NRF is one of the major pieces. But your question was more on the student side, right? Let me start it from undergraduate. I mean, the base is laid out, of course, at the school level, as ma'am was just talking about. But at the undergraduate level, the recognition is that's much more important to explore breadth, right? And identify some of these areas. Because as we know, there's so many important areas of research that are interdisciplinary that require this. And unless we have more exposure at the undergraduate level to breadth, we are never going to be preparing the next generation of researchers to work at this space. Your work at Ashoka and now at Plaksha, I mean, you're exactly in sync with that idea. So I think that's very important, that starts from there. After that, promoting better quality masters and PhD programs, there are many policies that support that. But I think that part of the chain is a more strengthening. The reimagining, I think, really comes at the undergraduate level as far as this policy is concerned.
I completely agree with you. In fact, I've seen when students come in from schools which are not so progressive, they do come into to our kind of systems. They find it very challenging to start thinking because they've been so sort of taught, and the whole rote learning system is so integrated in their, ingrained in their minds.
Can I share one small
yes,
anecdote with a student? And I think it just, many people might connect with this. So I had a student, in my exams that I give, I always tell my students, hey, you don't have to memorize anything, you can bring a cheat sheet, right? That's standard policy.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, oh, wow, padna nahi hai iske liye, cheat sheet, you could put anything you like, great. So this guy really bombed the exam. And he was serious. I mean, he would pay attention, things like that. And he came and spoke to me for 45 minutes. I had to speak to him before finally he said something that made me understand where he was coming from. You know what he said? He said, sir, I just don't understand how to crack your exam. And the minute he used that word, then our conversation went to the fact that he had gone through the quota system, the JEE, and he said, everything in the world has a tariqa. You have to know how to crack it. Once you know that, you know everything. I said, that's not the way the world works. That will get you into JEE, it'll get you into that system. But that is not what the world cares about. The world's problems are not cleverly disguised tariqas that you have to find. And it took him so long he did fabulously in the final, His hard work, I take no credit for it. But it just took me so long to recognize where he was coming from on that,
I think it's time to sort of get some comments from the students out there. I know nobody likes, us to put a spotlight on them, but, maybe one of the students can tell us how they feel about this whole student-centric approach, this whole, you get to decide what you're studying and how personalized your learning can be. Would any brave student please tell us what they feel about all of this? If not, I'll have to pass it to the educators, but I definitely want to hear from you, please.
Anyone from the audience?
No, that's okay. So anyone in the audience, if you have any comments, if you would like to. Yes, please, please.
I'm not a student, definitely, but
Please go ahead.
I think this was a good, informative session. So I just want to check, like, I think right now students have a lot of distraction, right? I mean, if you see, there are a lot of things which are happening around the world. There's social media, distraction. So is there anything in the NEP which kind of, make them focus on things that would make them successful? I mean, is there something which, a part of NEP which kind of, increase the focus instead of like, just getting distracted through multiple channels and various things which are happening?
Yeah. Would any of the
So-
panelists? Yeah, please go ahead.
I'll answer this with an example that just cropped up in the university, right? So, yeah, the way we teach is different. We expect the students to have deliverables every day, right? We have only 2 hours of classroom lecture that happens. Rest part of the day, they're actually working on the activities that they have to deliver by the end of the day. We started off the university within the first quarter. A bunch of students wrote email saying that this is too much work, right? This is too many hours of work every day. We are spending 8-9 hours of work. We don't have time for anything else, right? I said, well, we were very clear this is a deliverable-based learning, right? You're doing project-based learning. By the way, that's how the corporates work. That's how it works in the real life. Each one of us who has a job, that's what happens. When you put that kind of a rigor, there is no time for social media. There's no time for things that can be done on a daily basis. So I believe that's the way to solve it, right? Because each one of us have a job which mandates we have tasks, deliverables that needs to be done, if not on a day or a weekly basis, and then we are able to manage time. The students actually don't have that in the old education model. They have an exam which can be passed by studying for the last 3 weeks prior to the exam. So just having them do work every day, deliverables every day, should change the narrative. That's my take on it.
I think that's a good idea, right? Discipline, basically building discipline in their kind of, day-to-day activities.
But if you look at NEP, I think what they are talking about is more project-based learning. I think that's interesting enough and more personalized learning. So if a student is picking up projects which he or she is very passionate about, they are going to enjoy it so much that it's going to take a lot of their attention and not really, have them as distracted. So at Plaksha, we start, they start working on projects that are close to their heart from semester 1 onwards. So whether it's clean energy, whether it's climate change, whether it's future mobility, whatever they want to work, they have those open spaces, makers, labs, coding cafes, sit there, work there, do your thing. And I think that whole builds a lot of excitement about learning, and it doesn't limit them. And that's what, I think that's what NEP is really pushing to see, bring back the joy into learning, right?
No, I agree, like passion is what drives learning, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that would work.
Dr. Manjula, you were going to say some comment.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing, what he was talking about Atria. At the school level, what the NEP has brought in is that there'll be so much of experiential learning. It's nothing new. Even Tagore said the same thing. But how many of us have really brought it into our classrooms? And if we have that only the framework is given to the child, the rest he explores. And he has a project which is given, there's a design thinking to the whole pedagogy. That's what the NEP wants. But it'll take a lot of time to reach there. But I'm sure we will.
Absolutely.
I just want to add to it, right? Again, taking examples is the best way to illustrate it, right? Kanchi mentioned about students getting to pick their passion area, project they want to work to, right? Our academic director at Atria, she actually works with the students when they say they have an idea for a studio that they want to implement. And then says, okay, let's put a plan together on what are your deliverables by when, right? So the sign-off is done in the beginning. You're pursuing what you want to do. I will enable you, I'll provide you all the support, but you have signed up on deliverables. It need not be daily. It can be weekly, monthly. And your credits for this particular work is based on you satisfying the deliverable requirement. That absolutely puts discipline in the student.
Right. The ownership, right? That they own the whole thing, the experience. That
Yeah, I think at the school level, making them responsible for their own learning, making them accountable for their own performance would be a good way to start right from the school level. So that can help that way.
I'm going to encourage the audience to ask questions, please. We have this August gathering here. Yes, there's a question. Somebody wants to ask a question.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Professor Preeti from Reva University. It's a wonderful evening. What I would like to tell here is early education and secondary education are basis for our university education. And you people nurture, take care, and build children and
Factory. Obviously, they cannot even think creatively because from class 1, we have pushed that it is this person who can crack the exams. So I think I would give it 2 years.
Shefali, would you like to comment?
As far as training of teachers is concerned, I feel it has to be a continuous process because children are changing on a day-to-day basis. We have to keep pace and we have to be a step ahead. And continuous training, continuous learning from each other. And in last 2 years, we as teachers have proved that we can be the best student or student of the year. Because we have learned, the amount we have learned, the leap has been really tremendous. So training has to be a continuous process. And we have to start as early as on yesterday.
Professor Viraj, I know you've done some work around this area. Would you like to tell us?
Just thank you for the opportunity. So teacher training is an area of research interest to me, actually following this NEP and understanding fully the scale of the challenge. So I've actually been contributing to some of IISc's teacher training efforts in our Chellakere campus. So I'm going to share an anecdote with you from there. This is not yet research level publications, but it's giving us some sense. So the teacher training that I have been involved in is for mathematics. And the premise of the teacher training, based on over 10 years of data, is that many of the teachers come with, the portion I was investigating was, all right, suppose I'm the student and I'm trying to solve this problem, even without upgrading the curriculum. In the present curriculum, I'm trying to solve the problem and I'm not able to make progress with it, or I'm trying some offbeat strategy, fundamentals, and there's evidence that recognize that I'm going off track, help me get back on track. Can they identify where I'm making a mistake? And one of the things I experimented with during the training program was exactly this question. And what I found was that because the base level is that weak, unless the student's answer is exactly like the model answer, teachers are unable to recognize and provide formative feedback. So yes, it needs to start yesterday, and 2 years I think would be wonderful. I think it's going to take much longer. I'm just talking about just the mathematics at higher education level. There are many, many other areas, So I just wanted to share that bit because, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I do feel the shift towards formative assessment is important and is probably going to be the hardest thing when it comes to teacher training around. Even if we don't move to student-centric, which we of course need to, but even if we don't do that, or even if that takes longer, even if within the current model, if we try and go for more formative assessment, I think we've got a long way to go.
I would think, I just want to add one little thing, that technology could come to our, for our use, because the AI kind of assessment, that definitely will help that student who went off track to be found and prompt given to him how to come back. So I think now we have a lot of tools which are available to assess students and assign the next step to learning. So I suppose once the AI comes, and we are such great thinkers in computation, and I'm sure it'll come faster in India than anywhere else in the world. Because I do compare what we are doing to what the teachers across the world are doing. I think we're a little ahead, to be fair to ourselves. And the children, yes, they're a little ahead. And this is not just saying because of Bharat or anything like that, no. We see the way teachers work in the other countries and the way we are working, and also adapting to AI tools. We are a little ahead, But I do hope we keep ahead.
Yeah, I think as teachers, sorry, I think as teachers we go more based on our gut feeling and observation. And it's time we move towards data-driven approach. So assessment also based on the data that we have and use that data to identify the learning gaps, analyze it, and take corrective measures probably will be faster. Thank you.
Having been a teacher for over a decade myself at the school level, I would just request heads of schools to please make sure that students are not, teachers are not so overworked. They need time to do their own research. They need time to become mentors to students. I think that's very important. If we are moving towards a student-centric kind of an approach, or even if we are looking to really, like I said, bring back the joy in learning, it's important that the student becomes a guide and mentor, or maybe even a colleague. You know, I've known faculty members who say that students are their junior colleagues and not really, because learning is a two-way street. So the success of NEP 2020 and the pace of its implementation depends on a large extent on how successfully the government, universities, and schools can tide over the practical challenges facing it. With that, we are not closing this conversation. We continue conversation over coffee, over tea, over lunch. We are all here. Let's keep talking. Thank you so much, and a very special thank you to our panelists here.
Thank you.
Request Revati to kindly felicitate our panelists. Thank you. Sapna Malhotra will now deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kanchi. Thank you so much for such an all-rounded, panel discussion. You strung everybody's thoughts so beautifully together, from ma'ams, edu warriors, and teachers as change makers, and from sir, from not accumulating knowledge, but, yeah, that's true. And giving the freedom to students to choose, I think that's such a wonderful thought that has been brought out. And sir, Mr. Viraj, bringing out that, of course, it's like what we call innovation needs to start from here itself, not just at the university's level. We need to build it ground up, but as well as top down. And Shefali ma'am talking about teacher training programs, bringing up the professional development of teachers, so wholesome. So thank you so much to each one of you for bringing all that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists. I request you all to be seated while we just transition to the next session. Our next keynote speaker is a lady who dons many hats. Nivedita Mukherjee is an education advisor for school managements, mentor for leadership teams, and an honorary member on several school advisory boards. Following a long career in science and technology, reporting, publishing, and teaching, she has also been a journalist for television and print. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence today, because the Education Conclave would have been incomplete without you. I request our chairperson, Revati Raju. Sorry, just a second. I request our chairperson, Revati Raju, to please kindly escort Nivedita to the stage and felicitate her. Thank you. Oh. I invite Nivedita to please deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Oh my, after glamorous speakers, 5 panelists, this is like the teacher who comes after lunchtime. and so I will stand. Because sitting and speaking, it's a very difficult ask for teacher to do. Because for me, standing itself is difficult because I'm used to pacing up and down in the class. I will try to stand still with the mic there, and I will hope that my post-lunch students are still keeping their listening skills and thinking skills and discussion hat on. So good afternoon, one and all. I must say, when Revati invited me to speak here, it was an immediate yes. I didn't look at the schedule. I didn't want to look at what duration. She said the date, and I said yes. 1, because it was Revati, of course. And 2, because it was an opportunity to meet thinkers and doers. A lot of discussion has been happening on NEP. I have participated in some. I'm sure all teachers have participated in NEP-related discussion, some of us pessimistically, some of us a bit optimistically, some of a bit meh. But I thought when we can meet in person, that would be a great and a beginning to a new era. And thanks, Revati, for really, as I think the chairman of FICCI said, very gutsy thing to do to herald an era. We have been gutsy as teachers. We have started our schools. We have opened our schools. Our middle schooler and senior schoolers have started coming regularly. I think primary children have also started coming to school. And I'm hoping that the IIT Kanpur is wrong and we don't have the 4th wave. Hail that. As a journalist, as an educator, as a career science teacher, I mean, I hail technology. I enjoy technology. I have been training on technology and doing for the teachers, but I like real world very much. From the post-its to actually 3D discussions, I really, really like it. I believe that I do have one of the best jobs in the world. I was just talking to fellow panelists earlier, and I think we can discuss the pay, we can discuss the qualifications versus the work hours, we can do all that, but the satisfaction of a student-teacher relationship, I think, goes well beyond anything. So I work with people who are energetic, creative, funny, and very, very insightful. I work with children and teachers, and I believe, and as I mentioned, Ms. Divya of FLO the other day, that while we discussed the topic and this and that, the students, schools, and teachers, they keep us young. And while I may look and actually be or grow older, my constituency, students and teachers are young and smart, and they keep me on my toes all the time, making me also younger and smarter than I'm actually otherwise. And isn't that the core of sustainability? To be and to build a society that is healthier and smarter in more ways than one. I've been an educator since the beginning of the 21st century, and yes, I'm that ancient. But I've had a very good fortune of working with educators and students from across various cities in India. I've worked with pedagogists across the world. And in my many years of classroom teaching and training teachers, I have always wondered, what are the 21st century skills? I am a 21st century teacher. My children are going to be 21st century workers. This is a world out there. What are these 21st century skills? And how is that connected to the sustainable society? Because NEP dictates, on one hand, all the 21st century skills, and on the other hand, we are building a sustainable society. How do they link? And what are we to do as educators to inspire these citizens of future? Because the onerous task is on us. We have to build in schools to go into undergrad and to go out in the world. How could we bring these skills in classroom and beyond? Over the years, I feel that no matter what subject, whatever skill, two things have stayed with me as most important aspects of good education. Research-based methodologies, that is pedagogical expertise, the new pedagogies, and relationships. And these are not either or. We need continuous upskilling in methodologies of teaching, as we are saying. We are hoping, as Manjula Raman said, in 2 years, unke muh mein ghee shakkar aur kuch aur, taki 2 years mein we are all ready. But I think the simultaneous big investment of time and effort in building relationships, some of which we have been able to build online in the past couple of years, strangely, and some of it we have to rebond in person with our students and our peers. Let's talk about methodologies and then come to relationship. Quite recently, as a part of an educational survey that I was doing, actually it was an extension of NEP, I asked several grandparents and parents to draw a picture of a classroom and repeated this exercise with teachers and then students. Guess what each of them looked like? Any guesses? Different or same or similar? Yeah, almost. There was a board in front and teacher up front facing the students pretty much like this. And students were all lined up in rows and cells and desks, all in one direction and quiet. Some of them drew a tree, the grandparents, some of them did draw a tree, or people who came from Rishi Valley, they did draw a tree, or the Vyasa Bargat tree kind of a situation. My favorite place in the school. They did draw a tree with children underneath, but that percentage was very small. And even that number of people, they were all facing the teacher in rows and cells under the tree. So the teacher is the fount of knowledge and the authority figure. And the students as recipients for downloading and absorbing the same. Well, as a speaker, I love lecturing, but it's very satisfying. But I found that for my students, it's definitely not inspiring. What do they like actually? How do children like to interact with the world and people around them? One thing that stood out while watching the children during meal times and playtimes, they like to chat as we do, and they like to make choices as we do. Shall we share our lunch? Where shall we sit? Shall we play this game or that? Who do we play with? As human beings, we like to make choices. We have all experienced during the pandemic. We love our family and home, but when choice is taken away, that you can't go out, you can't meet that one, we don't like it. Many times we have thought, oof, if only I could spend some more time with my family at home, only if I could do this a little bit more at home, I would do this. But when the choice was taken away, we didn't like it. So I think as human beings, we are hardwired for making choices. Nothing seems right when we are not allowed to make choices. So in my classrooms, I like to create situations that would give choice. And I think that is one of the key areas where NEP scores, because it brings back the focus on student choice. The student centricity is giving the choice back to the student. The skills that have resonated across subjects and students and what are now known as 21st century skills, the 4 C's we have mentioned many times: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. That should be present, of course, in all classrooms. These were identified long back by National Education Association and now reiterated by NEP 2020. And I agree with them, and all teachers and most definitely all students will agree with it. What I think, though, is that these should be the characteristics of the classroom, not just skills for children to learn somehow. There comes the role of us as educators, teachers, principals, school founders, as we all lead the vision and the culture of the school. When I say situations of choice, I mean that at any given time, many learning activities should be available to the children as they come with diverse abilities. They come with diverse learning styles. We have heard a lot about different learning styles and bringing equity in classroom. The children also come with different moods on different days. And as much as we'd like to adopt for different shampoos or different foods in a cafe, even in those simple non-life altering activities, children also like choices in what they would like to do to learn what they're supposed to learn. As a teacher of life sciences and genetics, I read and teach and understand how evolution happened over the years with collaborating and communicating since the hunting-gathering days. Critical thinking and problem solving was practiced by even the cavemen to survive. When they danced around the fire and told the stories of their hunting or did cave paintings, it was creativity and communication, isn't it? So these 4 C's did exist forever. We have identified, we need to bring them in the classroom. We find it pleasurable to sit down in the evening and have a meal together and chat about the day or watch TV together even now, which is someone else telling us story or singing or dancing and saying a song. Human character and needs remain the same, tools change. Our brains are wired thus not for the 4 C's, but actually the 5 C's, the 5th one being choice. So the classroom picture that we have been drawing over generations would need a shift from teacher-centric, we were discussing, from sage on stage kind of mindset to being student-centric. It's very easy to say, but losing control of class, assuming that you're losing control of class by making it student-centric will take a whole lot of upskilling, a whole lot of training, a whole lot of mindset change. During the same research survey that I was mentioning earlier, when I asked groups of grandparents, parents, teachers, and students to draw a picture of coach and students, most drew a playfield with stick figures of excited arms and moving legs, and coach amongst the students, not away, standing alone at one corner of the basketball court or the football field. What makes coaches so effective and the students willing to be coached in a game? Why do they learn better? They keep playing for hours. Why do they love it? Make it to odd hours, willing to get tired and more often getting hurt. Why do they learn better that way? They start practicing even before the coach has arrived. Have you seen that? I mean, your own children you would have seen. You take their coach has not arrived and they start dribbling the ball even before that. How are these activities student-centered? What choices were children making while they were there with the coach? Where was the coach located while the teaching was did? I fell in love with biology as Miss Ava Mathur, and I remember her very fondly. My high school bio teacher took us to the little garden she had set up near the playground of a convent in Jaipur where I studied. We would grow things, check out life cycles of butterflies and frogs and get leaves and extract chlorophyll, look at onion slides, cheek cell slides under the microscope, discuss with the classmates, get messy. Miss Ava would move around us because we would not neither go in line nor stay on the desks. She would move around us and nudge us, showing us, helping us solve problems. And I, as well as many of my other classmates, went on to make herbariums, collected samples, even during vacations, much like the coach, when the children start playing before him and continue to play after him or her. We did that, exactly that with sciences. So it was not the subject if some of us were thinking, oh, because it is football or basketball or it is game, that's why it is. It wasn't the subject. It was how the teacher worked around us. And believe you me when I tell you that almost our entire batch of science students went on to pick botany, zoology, marine biology, medicine, and as I did, genetics for higher education. She had ignited our minds to learning her subject. We were learning other subjects as well, but she had ignited our mind to learn that subject by giving opportunities of collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and most essentially, choices. So whether it is a STEM subject or a humanities subject, finally, it's not the subject, but the teacher. Many of us are parents, and we know which subject our child likes. We know that the child likes that teacher. It will be very, I cannot imagine a student saying, I hate that teacher and I love the subject. So I think there's something for us as teachers to think about it. I had tried adopting most of this, my Miss Ava Mathur's methods in my modern classroom. And depending on the lesson themes of what, what the learning objectives would be, I would design activities at the learning level, not at the assessment level. Of course, assessment level, formative assessment, we need to give activities. But the learning path needs choices. How do I want to learn? What do I want to learn? Makes a big difference in the classroom. I would keep multiple, like Professor Viraj said, I would keep multiple choices of learning in the classes, multiple resources, even in high school classes. I would keep my laptop open for them to go check out YouTube links that I would have set out, or TED-Ed, or BBC Bytes. Relevant links, I would keep them out. I would keep some reference books. I would also keep connects of a couple of experts of the subject that they could talk to or interview. And now, last couple of years, children have done podcasts by interviewing, and thus they have learned far more than what the syllabus entailed of the topic, because they had the choice to learn how they wanted to learn. Of course, in turn, it made my life difficult and interesting, because they learned far more than I was planning to, and sometimes further than I knew. But then that broke the hierarchy of teacher-student completely. In fact, one of the interesting things that technology did last couple of years was it completely broke the visual hierarchy of teacher and child. We were all like little post-its stuck on the screen, and actually many times one of my students would say, "Miss, you take too long making breakout sessions. You make me the co-host and I will make the breakout sessions and I will dissolve the sessions. And these children don't come back after 5 minutes. They continue with their breakout sessions. So I'm going to put a clock in the breakout session," which I struggled for a couple of, time to figure out how the clock is to be set. Because look at me. I mean, I'm like ancient in technology, despite being a science and tech teacher. Zoom, I mean, I had not even heard of Zoom. My extent was WebEx, and those were complicated, and those would drop out and drop in, and it was very corporate conferences that would do. But Google Meet and Zoom and all these vocabulary that got developed, and the things that, "Miss, look at the 3 dots right there. Miss, look at the tick marks where it is there." And then came the virtual backgrounds. So I think we completely changed the picture of the classroom. In terms of hierarchy, in terms of relationship with children, I think we have gone 2 steps forward. We don't need to, I think, come 2 steps backward now that we are opening the school, I must say, with caution, because I know how eager we all are to come back to schools and to start completely in-person sessions. But I do think that we can just come 1 step backward, or maybe not backward. We can come 1 step sideways and explore the hybrid way of learning, because that truly will give more choices to learners of how will they access their sessions. All this is fun for me, and no wonder, even as I grow older, I felt always really young, and I'm always excited to enter my class. I've handled small classrooms of IB and IGCSE, and very large ones I'm handling currently in the government schools of North Karnataka. But this method allows me to sit in small groups of students while they're learning through multiple activities that I have set out for them. I can relate to each of the learners, and I can connect to them with them, the dots that they are missing, what they were discussing, that if the student has walked little deviated from what the method would have followed, should have followed, or could have followed to get to the answer, I'm able to support that simply because I am trying to walk away as much as possible to be the font of knowledge and to be the coach. That picture of coach and children is forever in my mind, and anytime I'm thinking of standing up front and saying, okay, this is how it is done, or reaching out to the board, I try to see that time is minimized, and I'm sure many teachers will try that now, because we have tried that with technology over the past couple of years. And it's a possibility that Ms. Raman's dream will be realized, that in 2 years we'll be ready, because we have actually leapfrogged a bit with technology in upskilling of the teachers. So when I'm training teachers, I insist and train them on lesson plans, of course, on lesson objectives, yes, assessments, yes, all are important, and in current situation, effective use of technology in a collaborative classroom. But what do they get impacted most of all? The care they get from the teacher, the interest in their lives and thoughts that are shared and heard by the teacher. The teacher's stories and their stories are the most that connect. That brings me to the 6th C of learning after choice, and that's C for caring. It ties up all the other 21st century skills. When you care enough to give them attention, when you ask them how was their day. Just I was speaking with Kanchan and Kanchi and our NPS's principal, and she said, Shefali, and she said that we try to open the classroom few minutes before and close the classroom few minutes later, and keep it for chit chat right? You mentioned, yes, that keep it for chit-chat. And that chit-chat is such an essential part of life. One of them said that I keep my Zoom room opened through the day. It's like my open office that you can walk in and have a discussion with me through the day. So those are essential barrier-breaking mindsets that the technology has got us into, and there's no going back from there. And what are these chit-chat actually about? They're very simple chit-chats. You know, usually I like to ask them, which is their favorite YouTube star? You know, I call them by name in the physical classroom. I ask each of them why that person is sitting quietly by the name. I try to point out to each individuals and see how whether there's an eye contact with that child. Sometimes I've even sung happy birthday to my undergrad class if they know that, oh, this one's birthday, and from after that they have all started telling, oh, it's this one's birthday. Who doesn't like to be sung happy birthday? I do. So why would a child, a student of any age will not like to? And that takes how much? 20 seconds is the whole song, but that completely shows that you care, and the student starts taking care of what is to be shared in that class. So yes, 4 C's of 21st century. 5th C, I would say most surely choice. And the 6th one, which we all know, and that's the reason why we are in this job, if we can call it a job, because we don't retire from this job. I was telling that I don't want to retire from this job because I like doing this. So till I can, I would like to do this. And teachers seldom retire because they like to learn and teach all through. And that is where caring comes. We care for our student, we care for our subject, we care for our job. And thus, that is the ultimate thing which ties all of it. So we do need to allow students opportunities of choice making, of collaboration, of communication, critical thinking, creativity, and I'm rattling off, and most definitely caring for our children. So in 2015, when the leaders agreed to 17 global goals, officially known as SDG or Sustainable Development Goals, it's now 7 years. We have more than ever work to do. The goals have the power to create a better world. NEP has a timeline of 2030. I think the SDG also coincides the same goal, ending poverty, fighting inequality, addressing the urgency of climate change. But in the Venn diagram of 3 spheres, and you can see that I'm a science teacher. So if you have an environment and you have social and you have an economical 3, in the center is sustainability. And where are we in the education? The education is in that social sphere. But tell me, even if we are in that social sphere, do you think environmental awareness can come without educating about it? Or economic growth and equality can come without education? The job readiness that FICCI chairman was talking about, where does it come without appropriately tuned in education? So I would say that sustainability may be at the center of it, but I think education is at the forefront of it. So guided by goals, we have SDG goals, we have NEP goals. It's now up to all of us, governments, business, civil society, general public, to work together and build a better future for everyone. It's an urgent call for action. It's a learning crisis, as they said, or it's a sustainability crisis. Both crises, I think we have a panacea in education. It's clearly understood that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with the strategies of education. And NEP is one way of getting it. Where do we educators right now come into this picture? It is the most powerful weapon we can use in the world. Mandela did say that. So we are in the 4th out of the 17 SDGs, quality education. NEP wants quality education. It has given us a timeline. It has given us a framework. It has given us a structure. it has also given us something to hang our coats on, because sometimes when in forward-thinking schools, we are thinking of formative assessments, we are thinking of non-standardized tests. There is a back pressure from, we say, oh, CBSE has told it has to be like this, or parents want to know what the grades are. I think as educators, we are lucky to have NEP by our side, because it just completely refutes all of those things and says, yes, you should continue to do these kind of assessments. Yes, maybe there will be a test at the end of it, but through the life, you will do all kinds of formative assessments. There will be continuous assessments. There is a budget set aside for teacher training. There's a time budget and there's a money budget set aside for teacher training. Only when I was setting up the university, I realized that UGC also has actually mandated, but I wonder how many universities actually, that they have mandated 6 full days of professional development for professors in higher education. So I wonder how many days of professional development we as schools should attribute for our teacher development. How will it impact the decision makers of 21st century that we are bringing up? We are honor bound, it's imperative that we do that, but how do we do that? Can we do that with our mindset of Sage on Stage? Can we do that with the mindset which created the problem in the first place? I think it's a good time for us, in the backdrop of pandemic, in the backdrop of what we have learned, in the backdrop of knowing as school educators, as school principals, the potential of our teachers to learn quick, fast, and come to the rescue of students. When the goal is the child, the teacher rises to the occasion. Have we noticed that? When the goal is of the organization that you should do upskilling, we should use Google Drive. My God, how much we have struggled asking teachers to use Google Drive. From the next time you should upload the document in the Google Drive. We have struggled telling teachers that, but when it was for the sake of students to be able to reach out to the students in every corner, in every which way, we have learned technology. So I think student centricity is a good way for us to go forward as institution owners, because we have seen that when teacher wants to reach out to the student, she will spend 10 hours of a day, ask her husband, ask the friends, ask her students how to get around to do it, and she will get there. So if we have to reach there, I think I have been discussing with the teacher training institutes that if we all start putting student at the center and not call it as professional development because you need to upskill, you need to do upskill because you need to reach your child, because you need to reach your students, because you need to make them entrepreneurs and students who will give jobs and get jobs. I think the teacher in all of, the educator in all of the teachers will get to that. Thank you. Thank you for calling me, Revati. Thank you for coming today. And I wish for all the educators and parents best in getting our 6 C's together. I like alliteration because also I'm a teacher and it's easy to remember. So I would like all of us to remember. We all know the 4 skills, 21st century skills, because they have been rammed hard. But we need to remember the choice and care are the ones which tie all the skills. And the choice and care also for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nivedita. You really brought out the, idea that we wanted to bring out, rethink, redesign, and reform. Because bringing in storytelling, bringing in gamification, making it more child-friendly, I think you encapsulated everything so beautifully. So thank you so much for your valuable thoughts. I please request Ms. Revati to facilitate Nivedita. Okay. Please, if we can request Ms. Rati to come here and facilitate Ms. Nivedita.
Thank you, ma'am. We are set for yet another enthralling session by another super set of panelists. And the topic is entrepreneurship and innovation in the education sector. I would like to invite Pooja Prabhakar to introduce and invite our panelists for this session.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will actually begin by playing one of the videos of Open House before we begin the panel. On behalf of FLO Bangalore, it is my honor and privilege to invite and introduce the panelists for the second topic today. I would first like to invite Mr. Yashvardhan Poddar, who is going to be the moderator for this panel. He's the co-founder of Open House. I invite you to please come up. Yash has his undergraduate education in economics and master's in public policy, both from Stanford University. He started Open House in 2018 with the vision of reimagining after-school education and has helped over 200 teachers and 4,000 students across the country. Yash, I invite you to make your presentation.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. I'll keep my presentation to be very short. Just give me 1 second. Hi, if you can just put on the slides, please. Thank you so much. I think this afternoon we've heard from Mr. Kamath, Ms. Vani, Ms. Nivedita right now on all the right things. You know, we spoke about giving children choice. We spoke about, you know, the role of extracurriculars. We spoke about the idea of job creation and entrepreneurship. So when I came back to India in 2018, I still feel like a student, by the way. I'm just 28 years old. When I came back, I asked my own cousins in Calcutta, where I grew up, that, hey guys, what do you want to learn? What's happening? And the answers I got were around fields like, hey, I want to study robotics, I want to do creative writing, I want to learn entrepreneurship, I want to learn poetry, I want to get better at dance. And I felt that if I see where the student is today, where the pulse of, let's say, what the child wants to learn, I think schools definitely will catch up in the world after the pandemic. But I think in our neighborhood, if our restaurants can change, our movie halls can change, our shopping malls can change, the least we can do is build a neighborhood learning hub where parents can come and send their children for all kinds of classes. So that's what we did, and we called it Open House. It's like your home, it's in your neighborhood, and there's a whole world of classes. We almost call it like a mini Disneyland for children. So yeah, that's Open House. We've just started in Bangalore this year after the pandemic. We're around town in 8 neighborhoods. You can learn more about us outside, but let's kickstart the panel. And thank you for hosting us, Mrs. Raju. You're more of a friend. I think, we spoke about this way back, so I'm so glad that I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yash, for that short and crisp presentation. I now invite the other panelists. We will start with Mr. Kashyap Dalal. I invite you to come up on stage. Kashyap is the co-founder and chief business officer at Simply Learn. He's an internet entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience in building growth teams across functions. At Simply Learn, Kashyap leads the global consumer and enterprise business. We're happy to have you here. Welcome. I next invite Professor Satya Prasad, former head of innovation at Intel. Satya has 3 decades of global experience, including 20 years at Intel, spanning strategic project management, tech innovation, and R&D, resulting in several breakthrough new products. He's an alumnus of MIT Sloan and Arizona University. Welcome to the panel. I now invite Ms. Shruti Chaudhary, our next panelist for the afternoon. She's into construction and architecture and has studied architecture at University of Minnesota and has an MBA in strategic management and design thinking from MIT Sloan School of Management. She's a director of projects and strategies at BL Kashyap, and currently she's in the 1% of women in construction in India in leadership positions. I welcome you. And also a FLO member. We're very proud of that. And then I invite Ms. Vibha Kagzi, our next panelist. Vibha is the founder and CEO of Reach IV. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a Bachelor of Science from Carnegie Mellon. She has also pursued courses at various other universities like London School of Economics and University of California. She is the founder and CEO of Reach IV and is on a mission to provide holistic guidance to young individuals. And she's also the author of the book, Break the MBA Code. Thank you for being here. I finally invite Mr. Vijeta Shastri, our final panelist. Mr. Vijeta is the Executive Director of TIE Bangalore. He has 27 years of experience in the service industry, such as hospitality, retail, travel, and co-working. He's a certified mentor, an effective speaker, and specializes in innovation, marketing, and implementing tie-ups. I welcome you to the panel. Yash, over to you to moderate the panel. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome, thank you. Thank you for the lovely introductions. The topic for today is entrepreneurship and innovation in the education sector. If somebody had asked me when I was 20 years old or 25 years old that, hey, is this even an interesting topic? Can we even hold a panel discussion on this? I think most of my peers would say probably not. If somebody asked me today that, hey, why are we having this panel? I think nobody's going to question the topic anymore. And I think the best example is if you look at what happened in 2020. we can talk about policy change, we can talk about resource planning, we can talk about, are we ready for change? But when there's a burning need, we've seen in our country and we've seen globally that there is an entrepreneurial spirit in all of us, in our schools, in our teachers, in our country, to overnight be able to help facilitate education for millions of children in schools, in colleges, and their own words. So I'm super stoked to be hosting this today, and thank you for all the panelists for taking out the time. Cool. I'll start off first from Kashyap. Welcome. I think for everybody who knows Kashyap, I think you've created massive impact in the last decade. If I'm not mistaken, Simply Learn's taught over 2 million people around the world. I want to talk to you first, just maybe more at a personal level. What motivated you to start Simply Learn in the times when edtech was not cool or sexy? How did this thought come to you?
Hey, thanks, Yash. Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you get asked a question like this, you realize how long it's been, right? So we started the company in 2010, so it's been about 12 years. I think it's been an amazing journey. I still recall that, the first few programs that we launched as a education company back then were now in the current times, the perception is that they are very old school, that basically these were project management programs, Six Sigma programs and things of that nature. And since then, over the last 10, 12 years, it's evolved every 2-3 years. At every 2-3 years, there's so much change, and that's only been accelerating. Moving to data and cloud and programming and AI, cybersecurity, blockchain. I think, what was the driving force which has not changed throughout this journey is there was this thought in around 2010-11 that there is a quantum change that's going to come where people break out of this mindset saying that I will do my graduation from a good school and then I'm going to work for 40 years till I retire, right? And that was the simple thought, saying that basically the speed at which change is happening, the way technology is impacting all roles and careers out there. And just refreshing, I mean, this was a time where Nokia as a mobile brand disappeared in a matter of 2 years, right? You talk to somebody in 2007 and say that Nokia 2 years down the line is not going to be there anymore, people would laugh at you, saying, what are you talking about, right? And in 2010, they went bankrupt. So that's the scenario in which we started the company, with a very, very strong vision, saying that the speed at which change is going to happen, people will have to break this mindset, saying that I will study, I'll get graduation, and then I'll work for 40 years and I'll retire. So we are accelerating into an age where people are talking about lifelong learning, unlearning being the biggest skill, being able to grasp new things, being at a premium, and that's really what's kept us going.
Awesome. I think genuine, I think for anybody who understands the type of decision you took or your team took in 2010, 12, 13 is mind-boggling, sitting where we are today. I think one question I have for you is, after the pandemic, one of the things that's become very interesting is work from home. I'm sure many, let's say, even FLO members out here are entrepreneurs. And now there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how we come to work, where we spend our time. So at least as a young person today, when I think about myself, I'm saying, okay, in the next decade, a lot of my own career will keep changing. Like in the past, when my parents were there, they would work in the same organization for 10 years, 20 years. There's a lot of change happening in the workforce. Want to understand what's your take on this change, and does Simply Learn help navigate that change in some way, or even outside of that?
Sure, Yash. So, Yash, I would break this change into two parts. One is just the location from where you are working, right? And I think that is, in my mind, probably the smaller part of the change, that you were working in your office desk, now you're working at your home, and technology is enabling that. So that's more the advancement of video conferencing and collaboration technologies, and COVID has only accelerated their adoption. So I think to me, that's a smaller change. The larger change that I see, which is happening in parallel, is the larger transition of businesses towards digital business models, right? And COVID has accelerated that big time. That is the part that is impacting careers in a much, much larger way, that earlier, people were in roles where they would look at, longer term horizon, being in the same role and going through maybe spending 10 years in a company and growing from level to level. I think things are getting very dynamic. Technology is driving different organization structures, more agile teams, less hierarchical organizations, flat structures, and that is what is driving huge amount of change. And people need to get adjusted to this entire faster cycle where they need to pick up new skills, they need to learn fast, they need to adapt to change. Companies are going through cycles which are much faster, right? So earlier we used to have this entire 5-year plan, 7-year plan kind of strategy documents that companies used to churn out. Today, I think most of the boards will laugh at that, saying, what are you telling me that this is your 5-year plan? After 5 years, what will happen? Whether you are in business or not, you don't know that, right? So the pace of change is so fast that people have to be very comfortable in reinventing themselves, and I think that's probably the biggest change. On the work from home specifically, I think there is a level above which things are extremely flexible. There is a on-the-ground execution team, which I feel gradually as COVID stabilizes, I also see a trend of coming back to office, that execution level staff, I expect that across companies, across different functions will be back in office in maybe the next 6 to 12 months, assuming COVID doesn't surprise us again. But yes, skill sets which are at a premium, I think all companies are going to be super flexible and allow people who create IP, innovate, they would have all the flexibility in the world to work wherever they want to.
Awesome. So I think I'll keep the second part of your comment about pace of change. And here I want to move to Professor Satya, that at least you've spent like maybe 2 decades at an organization like Intel, which for all of us has been the bastion of innovation at a global level. And you've also worked on innovation, how it can be brought into the workforce. Today, if I'm a child in school or if I'm in college, how can I actually bring in this innovation mindset in me? I'm curious to know your views on that.
Yeah, thank you, Yash. Before there used to be this silos. You would have the technology folks. Kashyap referred to that. I mean, you'd go get a good engineering education or a medical education or legal, and then you would spend the next 30, 40 years of your life there. And then there would be the innovation folks, mostly R&D maybe. And then there would be the entrepreneurs, right, or the entrepreneurship part. And these used to be diverse. Today, that's not the case. What you have is a collision of these 3 things, the technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And somewhere in the center is what you have that makes somebody really successful. So if you're on that path to finding that the centerpiece, which is a collision of all these 3, you need an innovative mindset. And if you had asked 20 years ago, people said you're either born innovative or you're not. I mean, this is the old leadership model that people debated, and now it's a settled debate, right? I mean, it can actually be learned. It can. So innovation is a learnable skill, and there are lots of good research that goes into it. The simple thing that we're trying to do, Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship that we helped set up 4 years ago, we've tried a few experiments. First thing, if you want to get into the mindset business, you should be in an unclass. We call this is a 2-credit course, but we start by saying this is not a class. And the mindset essentially comes from, there are 2 preconditions. One is imagination, and the second is creativity. And I'm overgeneralizing it. There's a lot more details to that. But if you can, spur and promote these 2 things, the imagination and creativity, that leads to, it sets the foundation for an innovative mindset. And there are several techniques, and I won't go into it, and if you have time at the end, I'd love to go through it. There are well-known ways of actually bringing this in a teaching form. I'll simply say, for those of you who are interested in Googling later, just look up, many of you might know it, it's called effectuation, as opposed to causation, as opposed to causal thinking. So there are about 5 principles, and what we try and do is to bring this into a classroom or in the unclass, where there's a lot of freedom, flexibility, a lot of structure, a lot of unstructured, but in a structured way. So in short, Yash, I think this requires taking a different view. Should I get another opportunity, I'll give you some examples of it, where the course is only 20% of the grade comes from my own effort. 80% of the grade comes from being part of the team. 20% is exams, 80% is all projects, and there are no right answers or wrong answers. So I think from an innovative mindset, imagination and creativity, that's something that we're extremely imaginative when you're a small child. But as we grow older, I think we lose some of that, and it's time for us to bring back some of those and create that mindset.
Awesome, thank you for that. I think let's stay here for a few minutes on this innovative mindset, and how do you think of imagination and creativity? Because I'll share maybe a personal anecdote. When I was a kid, I was into theater and I was into public speaking, and I was a complete brat while growing up, did all the wrong things. And most of my parents' friends used to really like that. And they say, wow, Yash is so creative, he's so imaginative, what do you do? And at least I think my mom's answer used to be, I let him make a lot of mistakes. I allow you to take risks. And it's through those risks that when you fail, that maybe he ends up doing something good in his life. I want to ask two different people, because I think both of you have interesting takes. First up, Shruti, you have learned an extremely interesting course in the world of design thinking. Can you introduce what design thinking is to everybody in the audience who may not know? And then we'll talk about, do you recommend other young people learn more about design thinking when they're in high school or then college? Love to get your take on that.
Sure. So I'm an architect by education, right? So design thinking is a process which is iterative, and it is based on the fact that you preempt, you make assumptions, certain assumptions, and you preempt the challenges that may arise during your journey or a process. And you plan for those challenges. And like I said, it's an iterative process, and you're predisposed to look at the problems that may arise. And that happens when you make the user the center. So it's the user experience, the UX. It becomes the center of any idea, any objective that you want to achieve. And for that, what do? You empathize. That's a word catching fire in India now. But empathy is the basis. Like if he's created an education portal, it is based on the user's need, right? So there are 5 basic, I won't get into the entire process, but it's empathize, then you define, you ideate, you prototype, and you test. And whenever you feel that you have to keep testing and you go back, that's why it's iterative, because if you feel that it does not address the need of the user, you come back to it. So you have to know your user very well. You have to understand their latent needs. Those are the unspoken needs. For that, you need to understand your target audience. You need to do a lot of research, interviews. Like a lot of the course, we were teams spread over all continents. And a lot of the course was based on us understanding our local users and then coming together to create a global product. And we did a co-working space as the end product. So it was very exciting. The other thing that we learn is, now I use it very actively, is the real win-worth quadrant. So is it a real need? Can you win? And is it worth it? So all those things tie up. And coming back to kids, I think all our lives we were taught think outside the box. That's where the magic happens. No. You have to think inside the box, within the constraints, and that's where the magic happens. So I'm a firm believer in that, and that even in construction, where we have projects all over India, we have to ideate, and we say jugaad, right? That's the Hindi word that you use, jugaad. It's actually not jugaad, because you're ideating and you're testing, and you have to think on your feet within constraints. So coming to the second part of it, and this is not a plug, the reason why I am associated with Vidyashilp University is because they have a design thinking program now. And they approached me last year, and I was very excited because in Bangalore, you don't hear of this unless it's an Intel or a corporate which understands the contribution of design thinking. And it's exciting because now I see all these children talking about design thinking. And they understand it. And it's nothing. It's what you learn. It's just that you are, like your parents allowed you to make mistakes. That is the most important process of learning. So you just put it into a iterative, non-linear process and keep learning from that, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think genuinely for anybody who goes home today and is thinking of newer ways of educating or upbringing their own children, do Google design thinking. I also was exposed to it in college and found it very interesting. I still think I'm a student of design thinking, and I have a long way to go there. Thank you so much. Let's talk about risks. I think, like we spoke one about the process. Okay, you can be iterative. I want to talk to you, Vijayata, about a little bit more around risk taking. That today you work with so many startups, you meet founders. What do you see in them that you don't see in other people? And the reason I ask this question is because we're sitting here in Bangalore. A lot of us in the audience, have children. They'll be asking themselves when they grow up, okay, do I want to join my family business? Do I want a traditional job? Or do I want to join a startup? Do I want to start my own company? So want you to help us understand some patterns. Like, what do you see in people in the startup ecosystem? Is it about their education, their upbringing, that makes them set apart?
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. And first is what I would like to say is the energy in the room and you wonderful women. We men are around, but you women are awesome. So let's hear it for all of you wonderful people. It's incredible energy. And I've had the pleasure of actually talking to a lot of by the way, I'm from Type Bangalore. I'm sitting in a panel here, which is from FLO. But it's still okay, man. It's still awesome because I've been interacting with these folks and they're amazing people. So thank you so much for that. So I've been sitting in this room for about 45 minutes. So a few words that I heard: care, choice, empathy. So let's talk about that first, right? See, one of the things that we do is we do a young entrepreneur program at TIE. So we bring in it's specifically 13 to 17-year-olds. And man, these people are so smart. They're pushed by their parents. There's no question about that. They're really pushed by their parents. And then when those presentations come out after the mentoring and everything, we look at those presentations and say, dude, who made you think about this? How did you all do this? And that's when we realize that they're also taking a risk because they have to manage education, the parents' expectations, they have to crack assignments, peer pressure, which is much, much more than when we were much younger, right? We had no peer pressure. We used to enjoy life. Not they don't know, but we used to chill about it. But now there's a lot of problems. And the empathy part, they really care. They don't say like we're building a blockchain company or whatever, right? They say we're doing things for the people. They empathize, they understand. They say that, look, we know that we are privileged. We have all the mentors, our parents, we have all that kind of stuff. But can we do something for, say, the pets? Can we do something for children who are not, the digital divide, unfortunately, which is there, which is trying to be bridged? Can we do something for them? So here, but again, coming back to risk taking, they don't really take risks. They're very, very well prepared. Many of the entrepreneurs, my great friends, let's raise a round for them because they're amazing. Come on, let's get some energy into the room. It's not so bad, yeah? We're in a 5-star hotel. My first job, by the way, was at Taj, right? So it's a very different world that I'm living in right now. But the kind of effort that everyone takes to, research, meet customers, get a great team, that's so important because you can't be alone in this journey. Yes, you are alone, but you should not be alone because it's so tough. I mean, I can really empathize. Simply learn, great brand, doing so much. But I'm sure you spend a lot of time thinking, okay, am I doing right? Am I doing wrong? And you need to talk to people. So risk means if you don't have a coach and a mentor, you're taking a risk. If you're not spoken to enough customers to validate your ideas, etc., you're taking a risk. If you're not upskilling yourself, not learning new things, then you're taking a risk. So the factor here is not about taking the risk, but are you preparing yourself, being calm, being humble? Too many times people are not humble enough to absorb the right things. I want to also talk about one more thing. We work very closely with the Intel startup team, the plugin program and the alliance program. Brilliant people. And they are also so caring. So I think corporates are caring. We understand that jobs have to be created. Entrepreneurs are the folks who are going to help out. So even when they take the risk could be about money, they take, they pledge their whatever house, they take a loan. But what can we do to help these entrepreneurs to create more jobs, support them, guide them, and come together as a society ecosystem to help them to reduce the risk, understand risk, and make them take risks, but in a proper way. I hope I could make some sense in that.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I've personally seen the TIE Young Entrepreneurs program. The first time when I moved to Bangalore in 2019, I was in one of these accelerator rooms and I saw these kids coming and said, what's happening here? And there were 20 of them. And they looked more serious, like they know what they're doing than all of us adults who are in the room. And that's when I actually first time noticed. So thank you so much for that. Talking about high schoolers doing things outside the box, want to chat with you, Vibha. I think you've, at a personal level, got a lot of cool experiences in terms of your education, the kind of languages you speak, the work you've done. And now you give advice to so many children about planning their college life in India versus abroad. Want to get your perspective. What are things that you have now learned or appreciated about colleges abroad that Indian colleges can bring back home? If you can share some thoughts.
Okay, you've touched a nerve here, so thank you for this question. And so interestingly, most of us on the panel have studied abroad. it's my job, right? It's my day job. I help students reach the Ivy League universities through my company. But somewhere within me, the Indian in me is just like, what are you doing? You know, why the brain drain? Why are you contributing to the brain drain? Why are you contributing to so many dollars leaving the country every year? What could we do in India to keep our talent here, right? So a couple of things that over the past decade that have struck me, the admissions criteria, first and foremost, right? In India, the admissions criteria, as we all know, and you went to IIT, so you're this better than all of us. Quota Factory, the show on Netflix, also shows us that it's all grade-based, right? For 5 years, you're put through this system where you're basically gearing towards one examination. What if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed that morning and didn't do well on that test? 5 years of all your hard work down the drain versus an admission criteria in the Western system where they look at your holistic profile, right? We've all been through this, so we know it's very focused on extracurricular. Of course, they look at grades. Grades are very important, but there's no cutoff system. So again, the IITs, the IIM, it's so heavily cutoff based that you're just like, even at a 98%, you're not good enough. So, I mean, the system, it just, brings you down. So admissions, definitely, I think they need to look at it from a holistic perspective. Anyone in this room looking at, university systems, etc., please do think of admissions and more holistic, because individuals are holistic. We're not just a summation of all the grades we've got by staying up all night and just cramming for one examination. Secondly, interdisciplinary education, I think, is super important. When I say interdisciplinary, it would mean essentially being able to study, let's say, music and math, or psychology and drama. Just explore my interests and get 2 degrees, or get a major in 1 degree and get a minor in another. That we don't have in India, right? From such a young age, I remember right after the 10th, I had to pick science, commerce, arts. So at the age of 15, where I don't know anything, you've suddenly asked me to make such a pivotal decision. And I come from a Marwari traditional business family, so I said, oh, I'll take business. For no reason whatsoever. I had the grades for science because my cutoff would have made me get into a science education, but I said, okay, I'll just take business. No information, no knowledge, no basis. And then I went to Carnegie Mellon, which is a super high-tech school, and I said, hey, I should have taken science. But without enough information, you're forced to compartmentalize too early. Interdisciplinary education, obviously. And you can drop math so early now. It's just, I find the choices just a little absurd. So allow for interdisciplinary. It obviously allows for lots of lateral thinking, which I think is the need of the day. Pedagogy, right? Teaching pedagogy. Why lecture-style teaching? Some of us must have been through case-based, and when I was at Harvard for my MBA for 2 years, it's only case-based, right? Case-based teaching, for those who don't know, is basically the students having a case-based conversation with the faculty member. The faculty member is 15% of the class. 85% of the lecture is led by the student committee, right? So the students become the teachers. There's a lot of peer-to-peer learning, much like this panel, where listening to everyone's opinion is sharpening my mind as well. So let the students take some amount of control of the classroom. Having a teacher, and I've been seeing my little nephew on these Zoom classes for the last 2 years with this teacher just droning on and all, and these kids are just zoned out, or they're staring out, because it's not productive. You can't continuously listen to somebody talk down at you. You need to have a conversation. A dialogue is always much more preferred. Communication and leadership skills, strongly lacking here in India. So I recruit IIT interns every year. This year will be my 8th year. I love the IIT kids. You're an IIT kid, so super, just like amazing work ethic, great mindset, super sharp brains. They pick up whatever we've done in 10 years in like 5 days, but they can't communicate, So they're really bright brains, but when they come into my room and they have an idea to propose, after 20 minutes, I'm just like, I have no idea what you're saying. Can you come back tomorrow and like put down this same thing in 5 sentences and communicate this? So there's no communication training. They feel a lack of it. They sense it. Some of them end up going to business school and then they get those communication skills, but why not teach them at the college level itself? Leadership and communication, really important. I could go on and
Actually,
on.
I have a question here, which you may have a good answer to, right? Today, so all of us are speaking about what should happen, what can change at a school level, at an institution.
Come from where you're born. That golden ticket, that lottery ticket you picked out, it does end up shaping. So for parents in the room who are trying to figure out who is this child and like what does he want to do, my advice always is that give them as broad an exposure as you can. Don't, like if you're a family of doctors, for example, don't expect your child to become a doctor by default. give them exposure to marketing, cinema, architecture, design thinking, technology platforms, why not? And just allow them to explore. The more exploration they do, the more wider their gamut of experiences will be, and therefore enable them to pick better. You know, if you limit them, then they think limited. And that's what I see, there's a difference between parenting. I see the ones who give vast exposure, and I see the ones who've limited. And there's a big difference in then the choices that the kid is making.
Awesome, thank you. I think I want to add 2 comments there. I mean, at Open House, we take a lot of pride in having a lot of courses for children. Whatever a child wants, we have. So I've had 2 instances where I didn't have a good answer. One student came up and he said that, hey, I want to learn music production. Where's your course on that? And I was like, okay, that's fair. No, we don't have that. And then we directed him to an online portal that had that. The next one was game design. Also another kind of course that, a lot of us talk about gamification. If you're following, the afternoon about using gamifying principles in your own workplace on how to teach. But a lot of children love playing games, video games, but just think about the jobs around making these games. Somebody at a serious elder level does that as a day-to-day job. So I think game design is something I've seen, and music production is something that at least the youth today, who's between 14 to 18, is quite jiving for. But yeah, thank you. Shruti, want to come back to you.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, this is also a FICCI FLO event, but more importantly, when I was reading your background, I found it super cool that you are a lady leading in the construction world. Even my own cousins, there's always this stereotype about women in engineering. Not going to ask you about what the world can be. How did that not happen to you? Were you motivated on your own, from your family? What motivated you to go down this world of design engineering?
So I don't think it did not happen to me. I'm just born extremely stubborn and persistent. So I think it was self-motivated, but also belonged to a family which has construction in generations, though we have diversified. We're a listed entity today. And we are professionally managed. But I think at the start, when you start removing gender from your being, it doesn't matter what space you are. I can harp about, oh my gosh, we are only 25 women in 5,000 employees. I can talk about that. But the 25 that we are, I would rather choose to see what we contribute to the company. And it's not an overnight process. I've been in this field for 20 years. And I started as a trainee. And I have stood at Embassy Golf Links was my first site. And I have stood there in the sun. And that motivated me to work harder because I was the only woman on site. And also it motivated me to start my real estate company in 2003. I didn't know it was called a startup then. That was way before the startup culture. And I started the company, and we did 4 successful projects, and we sold it to the Nandas, Shweta Bachchan's family. That's the claim to fame. But yeah, so, it was something that I think the parents nurture within you. There was no stereotypical gender differentiation ever. I have a younger brother. He calls me his brother, calls me his sister. So it's something that you have to start removing your gender and not become a victim of it. You have to rise above it. And I mentor a lot of young women today and a lot of young women in design. And there's something that I always share, that there are going to be 100 battles. I'm sorry, gentlemen, we women have 100 times more battles to fight than you. But you might have 100 battles, but you cannot fight all the battles. And you'd be silly to try to fight all those battles. So I always tell them, prioritize what is important for you. And when you get there, those minor battles will vanish. So I am the diversity in the room 10 out of 10 times, be it the client, be it, though Embassy is a refreshing client to work with, there are a lot of women on board. So I think you need to stop becoming a victim of gender, because there are great men. I've gotten here because of men, So it's not that we get into that. Be a feminist. I have 2 sons. One is almost 17. And I think it's a positive thing that you become the change. Now they see that their mother has always worked, and the father and mother are equal in an equal household. I think that is the harbinger of change. And it's something that it's not a question anymore. Like gender, yeah, construction, fine, big deal. Like for me, it doesn't make any difference. But like I said, in training, to get here. So I think there are some amazing female engineers today. I'm sure he has met a lot more in tech. We have very few civil engineers, but we really encourage the ones that we get, and we have 150 interns and new engineers that join us every year from all over India, and they come under my jurisdiction. So we really take care of the guys, but we take extra care of our female engineers. Yeah.
No, awesome. Thank you so much. I think a round of applause for that.
If I may, I want to add some numbers to what you just said that further strengthens what you said, and this is a FLO event, and I think therefore it's appropriate. At the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, roughly our split is about 30% girls and 70% boys, and that's representative of the intake. So in some sense, it's 50-50, right? I mean, that's just the natural distribution. That's just the intake part. Now, when you look at
work and determination,
look at it, 3 to 7, and then when you come to the outcomes, it's 5 to 5. I mean,
Fantastic.
so
Yeah.
the numbers speak for themselves.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys. I think I'm going to use the last 10 minutes with the panel. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to ask a bunch of open questions. Some of them, anybody can chime in and take a jab at it. Talking to some parents before the panel started, I also meet a lot of moms every day. I think everybody's dying to come back to offline. So my first question, Kashyap, come back to you. Your business is built around online learning. Of course, it's meant for an older age group. When you look at 2030, 2040, where do you see the split between online learning, offline learning? Do you think the future is more online, or will this is more for COVID shift? Your views matter.
No, sure. So there's obviously a lot of discussion around it. I think broadly, when we look at education as a whole, there are multiple segments, right? And the way I look at it is that K-12 or school is very different period of life. Social interaction is extremely critical. Even to learn skills, you need interaction and, understanding the person, understanding his handicaps and overcoming them. Professional learning is very different. Again, leadership skills is very different, right? So I think the way I look at it, the space in which we are operating, this is more about creating the right digital skills, technical skills. That is an area where we see huge benefit of online, and we are 100% committed to it, that our model is completely online. We don't see that changing. So in terms of creating hard skills and capabilities, online is the way to go. I don't see that pivoting back to offline. In schools as well as in leadership programs, I would look at, it will be a blended future. So I don't think it's going to, go back to completely offline without any aid of technology. But at the same time, I think all the adoption of technology, these are areas where there will be the right balance. I don't think it's going to pivot back.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody else want to take a take on this? Is the future more online, more offline? Is somewhere in the middle?
I think he's absolutely correct in the fact that it becomes more accessible because you don't have to travel a distance. Timing can be at your convenience. So I think it's very much the hybrid model is here to stay.
I just want to comment, given that we are talking about education and entrepreneurship, the model I think that works for us, if you look at entrepreneurship education, it's 2 parts. There's a cognitive part, and then you have the experiential part. The cognitive part can definitely be done online, and there are many ways of doing it, right? But for the non-cognitive part, you really, for all the 4 C's, or the 6 C's now that I know, the 2 more extra C's, you do need to meet people. So this last Saturday, given that you talked about design thinking, we specifically got all the students to come to the class, and it runs for 4 hours, and the energy, the enthusiasm, and just the camaraderie that happens, we just can never replicate it in an online thing. The online thing is really good, where we get folks from Whitefield 2 hours into this and go back.
Don't necessarily need 8 Ivy League colleges to rule the world. So this unlearning, relearning, unstructuring, structuring, I think it's just 2 factions, and both are fabulous, and whatever appeals to each parent is the right answer.
I think, in fact, I would just add one point to that, Vibha. You bring in a very interesting point, right? One of the things, especially for the postgraduate learning environment that we see, and we are already seeing signs of that entire traction, is that, if somebody, let's say, is doing a program on business or, business leadership or digital transformation or whatever you pick up, there will be an option to basically go to a, IIM or a Harvard or an ISB or any of the top institutions. But there the seats are going to be extremely limited, and that's a, that's a filter that not the entire universe is going to break into. But one of the trends that we see is that increasingly a lot of people, because of the entire exposure to online learning and what it can deliver, we see this new trend that, let's say, for example, if I get into an IIT, that's brilliant. Otherwise, instead of going to my neighborhood college, should I do an online program from an IIT, right? And that explodes the entire market, that I would rather learn online from a tier 0 institution or a tier 1 institution rather than going to my neighborhood college, which I used to do earlier, right? And that, so online can create much more options where the high quality education, how can you basically open it up for masses, which was earlier not possible.
I think that's a very interesting one. I think I can, let's say, attest to, let's say, many of my own friends who currently are considering MBA programs. They do, look at some of these other options in that, okay, I'd rather go to a really good school and, learn from them, even if it's online, rather than just, getting into any school where I can get an admission. So I think digital really opens up access, both at a geography level and at a willingness to pay level. I think college is also super expensive in most parts of the world. So I think that also plays into a role. Cool. 2 fun questions. One, if you were to go back to school, and we're talking about no more college, we're talking about high school, what would you learn? Now you're like all educated people, achievers, so much of knowledge. What would you go back and study in 2022 or in 2030?
So I should say this, I studied in Goa, a different Goa from now. So I really can't answer that question. I would have more fun in Goa. But okay, but the jokes apart, see, there's a lot of new things that happen. The creativity, like maybe we never had that as a subject. And that's so important today. It doesn't matter what age you are or wherever, right? So learn creativity, how to innovate, how to handle situations and ambiguity. I think that's a skills that is not a subject, but it's a mindset, it's a thinking process, the confidence. Maybe those were the things that I would love to get, even better, and how to negotiate without seeming to. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I mean, I feel like my education was quite reasonably holistic. I don't see the need to go back to school per se, because I feel like learning happens like every day, every moment, right now. If I choose to learn how to learn code in Python, I can do it tomorrow morning. So I don't have any regret. I just feel like you just need a mindset to learn, and you can continuously learn. So whether it be coding, whether it be negotiation, design thinking. I mean, I've done courses in negotiation, in design thinking, in coding, all of it, and I could have done it before. I can access it even now, thankfully, due to technology. So
no regrets childhood,
no
basically.
regret, no regret.
Who else wants to go first?
I think I would, slightly different perspective. I can't think back and say I would change anything. So I had fun and I would keep it exactly the same. But if I think about, the future generation, or basically, what are the 1 or 2 things that I would probably want to influence and make sure that that's there for my kids, I think the 2 things would be, one is creating this attitude that whatever you do, give it 100%, right? So one of the biggest things that I've seen in my entire journey is that, whether there are specific phases of life of my friends, or I would have gone through a year of that kind of a phase, it'd be full if people get into that mindset saying that, back door, whatever you do, give 100%. That's a attitude that everybody should carry. Second one is that I think whatever course or program somebody does, like one of the things that we speak at home is that for my son or my daughter, how would I pick up any one project end to end? Like for example, simple thing like just make a table, right? Go through the entire process. How will you start? You will do design. You will create a wireframe, then you'll go and purchase wood, you'll negotiate on the price, which wood do you want to buy, then how are you going to cut it, how are you going to build it, and then finally how are you going to go in the market and sell it to somebody, right? If as simple a thing as making this table end to end, from raw material to the sales cycle, if a kid is able to go through it, whether during his 10th standard or his college or whatever it is, I think he will learn everything that you need to know for life.
I think that's awesome.
I just would like to add something. I have no regrets about what I studied, but I wish India is now moving towards a more liberal arts education. So I think that I wish at my time we had that exposure, because I think liberal arts exposes you to things that you would not necessarily think that you would do. So that would be my only thing. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
One thing that I probably would do more of is experimentation. I mean, we talk about failures, we talk about unlearning. I mean, one of the ways to actually try out a few things early on in your life is through experimentation, right? And that sits well in our minds, because failure, I mean, come on, we'll all say the right thing saying, oh, failure is something that's part of our lives, but nobody really likes it, right? When you're going through it, that can hurt. So experimentation, and today, even in masters or even beyond, I mean, there's a lot of things around business experimentation. So if there was a simpler way, and we're trying out a few things, if you can pull that in ahead in your 8, 10, and also don't be afraid to, take those little chances, summer internships, work for free, learn a thing or two. So you don't have to necessarily enroll in a course to learn something. You can learn things much more in some ways. So experimentation and being a little free and not really looking for those end outcomes usually helps you, and there is no such thing as failure. You'll learn anyway. Learning is there for that's table stakes. But if you do the stuff that you're actually liking and that you love to do, then, more the better.
Awesome.
Good with that. I did say about the Goa part of it, but I want to just say one thing. See, the kind of teaching that we had in our school, we were very lucky. They really taught us, it was a very small batch of people. And I would say this to the students out here, build the networks and the bonding. Still in touch with friends. We do work together, we collaborate together. So I think that, maybe that, how do you build strong networks? How do you build bonding? And why is it important for you in the later life? Maybe that's something that we should also inculcate. With not saying it's a business deal all the time, with ethics, with trust, with principles, and for reasons that you can also add value. Because I think a lot of the things out here is about, we're talking about mentoring, so paying it forward. So maybe those skills, it's a skill. It's not just a principle or a feeling, it's a skill. That should be taught, and we should really do it. That will be a great thing to have. Thanks.
My personal, wish here is a class on dreaming. I think, if children come into, school and okay, today we're going to learn how to dream. And, they actually are encouraged to dream in class, write some things around, what they want to do. Because I think we speak about choice. I don't know if actually kids understand that we want to give them the choice. I think that's the part that, if that translation happens in high school or middle school, it could be super cool. But hey, panelists, thank you so much. We'll open this up for a few minutes to the audience for any questions you guys have. Thank you.
I do believe in the liberal arts, but also having said that, I have a son who's doing his first year engineering, and I really felt that there was a lack of experiential learning where sciences are concerned. And we have such phenomenal brain for kind of technical, because I do believe our boys, even if we tell them you must be an engineer, but we would like experiential learning for them, which can be really huge, I feel. At least India going forward into the world as well.
Yeah, I think the idea maker spaces, or research labs done right for children at a school level are projects that need to become a lot more real, perhaps. Thank you for sharing. Ma'am.
Would love to, reply to her and also to Vibha over here. It's really not all gloom and doom. I've worked with Ashoka and then Kriya and now Plaksha. Those are amazing institutions which are international, and there are many more like that. If we make, and if you're as passionate about brain drain as I am, then I would definitely work with you to get students to these institutions. They're doing amazing work. They are international organizations here in India giving interdisciplinary learning, hands-on experiential engineering. Yeah,
absolutely, ma'am. Of course, Kriya, Ashoka, all of these I know very well. But you name 5 names, right?
No, I
the
agree
population
with
of
you.
India is 1.3 billion, with half of them under the age of 25, right?
Yeah.
So with 5 institutions, we are not going to be able to feed
So
this
Vibha,
population.
I think it's a movement, really.
movement, yeah.
Ashoka started 8 years back. It's inspired so many institutions in India. It's extended itself to help people set up. Plaksha is doing the same. I know Kriya would do that also. We are bringing back brains. We've got people like Raghuram Rajan.
I know all these people. Ashish is a Harvard alum. Kapil and I are very close, the Kriya founder. Of course, I know these models, and I'm very thankful to Ashish and Kapil to start these, but there are 5 institutions with an incoming capacity of 1,000 people.
So I want to jump in. I think we are doing some things here and now. We don't have to always reach out to Harvard or MIT, right? There are lots of models here.
There are lots.
I'll give you a quick example. So we did something with we've done this with Intel, but also with Cisco and Microsoft. 6 months, take a project, look for a common ground. Artificial intelligence, machine learning fits the bill for both the company and the university. They get to pick, the company gets to pick the problem statement in, say, 4 or 5 areas. They give it out, give an entire semester. It's not a weekend hack, a lot of Red Bull. No, right? You get the time, 6 months, faculty is involved, students are involved. They worked on it, and at the end of 6 months, talking about experiential learning, they've actually cracked a real industry problem, put the code on GitHub, and, an ex-company said it would take them $20,000 to create that. They got it done for free. And the kids got those 10 positions which never existed. So I think experiential learning is there. It's happening in pockets, but may not be in a very robust, standardized manner. And I think we really need to work towards that model where, it's a standard.
So just adding to you, because my son is, he's almost 17, there are enough and more programs available within India for experiential learning. So this is the effect of doing all conferences on Zoom, So the fumbles, please forgive me for that, So there are enough and more programs available within our country. Actually, schools also tell you about them. So the onus also lies as that ATL tinkering lab, and there's so much available. So if there are a lot of emails that come from school informing us from, I'm a Vidyashil parent, and I'm sure that all the other schools, TISB must be having the same. There is so much that he signs up for which is additional to school. So I'm a great believer in the Indian system. I did my architecture from India and then I went. I'm a great believer. And I also believe that, like ma'am very, very clearly said, we have to be the change, right? So not having, my son will be going to the US for some part of his education, but that is for different reasons. But having said that, for an Indian kid, in high school, in a metropolitan today, there are enough number of programs available.
I'll just repeat for everybody in the audience what ma'am is saying, that even in our schools today, how can sciences become more experiential? And it's very fair. If you talk about chemistry, I think anybody who's grown up here, organic chemistry was very scary when you were in class 11, 12.
Absolutely.
People are smiling. When I was in college, I went for a class on material science engineering. And the topic, they said, okay, today we'll talk about how to make new types of shirts. And I said, you can teach that? No way. But they said, if you've done introductory chemistry, you're prepared to start this class. So I totally hear you. We have some people raising their hands at the back. Would love to give them a chance.
Yeah, we have actually one student who's going to ask the question.
Great, please.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Manasa. I'm doing my MBA at One School of Business. I have a very basic question on my mind. People of my age or my friends, we easily get influenced when my friend says that I have started up a business and I'm very successful. We start getting influenced by that. Do you really think that entrepreneurship is a key for unemployment?
So maybe I'll give it a shot. I think, Mansa, I think there are different ways of looking at this, right? If at a national level and at an Indian economy level, if you think about it, entrepreneurship is the only thing that can solve unemployment. Because only when you create successful businesses, there will be job creation and growth and money to be shared with everyone, right? If there is no money, what are you going to share? So I think there, absolutely yes. But if I interpret the question the other way around, saying that if you are graduating out of college and there is peer pressure saying that I also want to do a startup because he's doing a startup, I don't think that is the right reason to get into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, frankly, it's not easy, right? So, and the success rate is lower. I think it's a personal call. I would say that basically you have to feel excited and feel the urge to jump in. If you have that as a drive, then yeah, you should absolutely do it. Increasingly, my feeling is also, and one of the most exciting things for India is that in the next 5-10 years, it will get easier and easier to be an entrepreneur. When I started my first company in 2007, it was a nightmare. There were no investment opportunities. It was really tough. Anybody who's investing money will say that I'll take 50% of your company, right? Now today the scenario is very different. It is entrepreneurship friendly. A lot of ecosystem exists. Also, the entire way the world looks at an entrepreneur, and if your company fails, right, they don't look at it as a personal failure. It's more that your business failed, okay, you'll go on and you'll do something else. So good news for you is that 5-10 years down the line, it'll get more and more easy to be an entrepreneur, but it's still a personal choice.
Am I allowed to take a minute on this? Because I get this kind of things all the time. See, don't worry about this. Be mentally tough and strong, not to fall into this FOMO, the fear of missing out and peer pressure. Don't get there. Don't get there, boss. Whatever happens. Okay, it's your life. It is your life. And you made him very nervous. Huh? He was like doing this to his father. I don't know why that was, but anyway. Listen, just chill. Life is to enjoy, but learn. And what I would suggest is talk to some of these young entrepreneurs and ask them, where did you struggle? What went wrong? Did you face pressure also? Ask them those kind of questions. And then, the thinking will totally change. But having said that, and I totally concur, things are much more easier now. There are opportunities to understand about the business. And I think that's the key word. It's not about entrepreneurship here. He said this also, it's about the business. If you don't understand financial, you don't understand legal, you don't understand term sheets, how are you going to be an entrepreneur? You're just walking into a disaster. So intern first, learn the business, and this is for every student out here, and it goes for everyone at whatever age and whatever you're doing, okay? You have to know, so validate, work with entrepreneurs, and then decide for yourself whether this is the path that you want to choose today or tomorrow, all right? But learn. Please learn, because that's all that matters, and forget about the peer pressure. Don't worry about it. Life is not that, okay? Have fun. Very important. Choose happiness and have fun. Cheers. Thank you. Come on, I said such a nice thing. And he was also so beautifully illustrating it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 questions left from the audience, and we'll try to wrap it up in 5 minutes. So last 2 questions.
Hello there. This is Dr. Smita Ranganathan. I must admit I'm slurring a bit just out of a dental procedure, but I really wanted to be here. 3 avatars. Mother to a 19-year-old who is waiting for his admission acceptance with Yale, a liberal arts student, so I hear you very well, ma'am. He plans to take up economics and music. Faculty at SP Jain School of Global Management, I try to teach digital strategy. Number 3, an extremely tormented student. I almost gave up on my admission in Armed Forces Medical College because I couldn't deal with the rigor of science education and what medicine took me through. The panel beautifully put through what we can do to empower a learner mindset among entrepreneurs and students. What about people like me when we were students who had a rapid deficiency of having faculty who lacked the learner mindset to allow us to encourage? So my question and my request is, now I'm on the other side of the table. Are corporates willing to not just work with faculty at the bottom of the pyramid schools, but with faculty like me who can really make a difference, who can actually use Italy economics to teach fermentation for a microbiologist and ratio proportion for a student who's interested in statistics? So are you willing to take up the cause of faculty like us to open up our worlds so that we can open up worlds in turn?
Professor? I'd like to take this, and I think you've articulated it very well, and that's where I think women shine. I mean, 3 different avatars, and I think I would have lost my mind in trying to do these 3 things. But to come to your point, I think increasingly corporates are willing to experiment and try. And we've also had the fortunate thing of startups having, trying to come and experiment with faculty. So the IUC program that we ran, the Industry University Collaboration, for those of you interested, I can send a copy of that. We've evolved a model, and it's still in an experimentative stage. But what we've said is we need a bunch of things to come together. You need a good set of problem statements and mentors from the industry. You need the faculty to be involved because, I think the faculty, we could all learn. I don't think any one of us, come in with everything that we together. And put a process together and not make one of these weekend things or a month thing. Give it a prolonged period of time. These things take time, and the first 2 months are just blown away by trying to figure out what the problem statement is. So we run this for about 6 months, and we've seen some tremendous results come out where the faculty is jazzed and kicked about what they've learned and what they've contributed, the students obviously, which we've spoken about, and the companies actually get. So there is a win-win-win in this thing, and if we can do more of such things, and like as I said, this is still in a very experimentative stage. 3 companies have come forward to do it. I hope that there are, the word gets out and more companies come in, more startups come in, and I think the faculty gets to benefit from it. I think there's a huge thing that's waiting to happen when these kind of collaborative models happen.
Awesome, thank you. All right, last question from the house.
Yeah, good evening all. This is Narsimha, founder of STEMX, where we normally work with schools, like say to teach STEM education, like different subjects of STEM education, like robotics, coding, AI, 3D printing, drone technology, right? I think someone told here, experiential learning is the way, right? So we strongly believe that it should be, even government of India has already implemented a lot of adult tinkering labs, as ma'am was mentioning. So it's there in almost 10,000 schools in all over India, right? And even there is a next phase where it's going to be implemented in 20,000 schools. So even as per National Education Policy, NEP, even coding and artificial intelligence is part of school education, right? So it's already been implemented. There is nothing like we are going to be part of it, right? It's already part of our school ecosystem, and it's good to see even simply learning as an integration of school education, right? Once they experience all this in school, and then they go to higher education, and we have platforms like Simply Learning and the other ones, right? Thank you.
Awesome, yeah, I think thank you. Naseema is saying that basically the movement's already begun. It's no longer a contemplation between us here. Awesome, I think that's a wrap from our side. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you for the audience.
Invite you to deliver the vote of thanks.
So thank you for such a wonderful session. Honorable guests, speakers, panelists, past chairs, FLO members, and all the participants. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of FLO Bangalore Education Conclave team and the volunteers, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the delegates who honored us with their presence and took out valuable time of their busy schedules. I must mention our deep appreciation for Mr. Yash, co-founder of Open House, for his work at Open House and moderating the session. A famous quote dedicated to all startups: the best way to predict the future is to create it. So keep creating. Also, I would like to extend thanks to Mr. Kashyap Dalal from Simply Learn. We need to keep reinventing and keep to the pace of the education. The way he explained, it was really good. Mr. Satya Prasad, visiting faculty at IIM Bangalore and former head of innovation at Intel. Thank you for all your insights, and we would want more students from India to be in the innovation lab. Mrs. Shruti Chaudhary, our very own FLO member and founder at CDS. You were very well to the point. Don't act a victim, and I truly agree with it. Vibha Kagzi, founder and CEO of Reach IB. You gave us a spotlight on education abroad and how a different sort of a hybrid model is going to come in place, where students would not want to go to the Ivy Leagues and would want to experience unlearning and a new way of learning. Thanks, Mr. Vijeta Shastri, TIE Director, for coming in last minute and putting in your thoughts and comments. He's very well versed in the startup ecosystem, so it was good to have your insights. I also wish to express my gratitude to our chairperson, Ms. Revati Raju, for envisioning this conclave and prompting empowerment through education.
I would like to thank all the universities for showcasing their institution in our conclave. Atria University, Greenwood High School, IIAD, One School of Business, Open House, Plaksha University, Reach IV, Sir MVIT, and Vidyashilp University. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend a very big thank you to all our members joining us today. FLO Education team, Payal, Divya, Aruna, Anuba, Sapna, Sudha, Divya Goyal, for all their efforts. Our volunteers, Sunita, Vidula, Pooja, and Nidhi. Thank you guys for making this event successful with your contribution. Last but not the least, a big thank you to our FLO members, Mrs. Neeru Agarwal from Greenwood High and Mr. Yash from Open House for believing in us and sponsoring this event. Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists. We overshot our time by 30 minutes, but every minute was worth it, and I think we didn't realize the time that passed. I'd like to invite our chairperson, Revati Raju, to felicitate the panelists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue this conversation over high tea at Blue Ginger.
1 minute. Yeah, sorry, sir. Is that mine? I'll just take a minute, folks. Yes, I'll just take a minute. This education conclave has been one of my dream events, which has been in planning since long. I thank each and every one involved in this for making this conclave possible and a grand success. It is when like-minded people come together that meaningful discussions happen, and this conclave has just been that. All the sessions have been so insightful and invigorating, and I'm sure each and every one of us present here has gained a deeper understanding and positive outlook towards a brighter future. To conclude, I would like to thank Pratik Acharya for all the support extended to organize this conclave. Thank you, Pratik. Are you here? Huh? Just call him. My fabulous conclave team of Iram, Payal, I would like you all to come here. Aruna, Pooja, Prabhakar, Sapna, Divya Goel, Sunita Reddy, and Ruchi Mittal. Give them a good big hand, please. Adina, something for Prateek. We got something for Prateek. Prateek? Here, Prateek. Thank you so much for supporting us. Yeah, thank you all once again.
Our mission is to create new age technology leaders who are confident, who are compassionate, who understand society, who understand human values.
Plaksha offers an imaginative and creative engineering curriculum which is unique in the world.
Real world problems have multiple perspectives and you need to look at different dimensions to solve these problems. Plaksha has a focus on interdisciplinary education and research, And this, I believe, will not only help us solve problems, but it will also enable students to learn about what all things are involved in problem solving.
For example, a Plaksha student who is taking courses related to computer science might be able to solve problems in very different areas such as digital health and smart agriculture.
So you have contemporary courses in technology which are very well blended with courses within liberal arts and entrepreneurship. You build in a lot of soft skills of effective communication, of empathy, of creativity.
I expect our students to be the technological leaders and innovators both in this country as well as abroad.
They will be at a unique position to develop new technology and find new solutions to the challenges facing the 21st century.
We envision our entire campus to be a living lab. Every campus is a microcosm of society, you know. It has all the problems that you see outside. So you can study these problems and find solutions, implement on campus.
I will be pursuing the Biological Systems Engineering course. I had PCMB in school, and because I studied biology, I was conventionally expected to pursue a medical profession. But here I am at Plaksha. I'm not only learning biology, but also robotics, artificial intelligence, data science, and even economics.
The faculty, the founders, the academic leadership, all of them are amazing. They're all distinguished in their own fields.
I joined Plaksha because I want to push the boundaries, make an impact, and make this world a better place to live in.
I want to explore the unknown.
I want to find solutions.
I want to lead fearlessly.
All of you to please join us for high tea at Blue Bar across. Don't leave without the high tea.
NSP School of Business, one of the top MBA colleges in the Garden City, Bangalore. We give our students the exposure they need to move up in the world. Our welcoming green campus, spacious classrooms, and common areas provide the right environment. Our vision is to be globally recognized as an innovative, socially conscious, trusted school of business that transforms students to world-class experts in the field of business and management. One School of Business, take your education next level.